morning, everyone. Let me start by turning it over to President Riley, who wanted to recognize a couple folks who are joining us today.
Thank you, Regent President Pruitt. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be with you at UW-Whitewater. I particularly like Chancellor Telfer, the purple cover on the wire here on the microphone. Nice touch. It's good to see all the Regents and the rest of you. It's wonderful to be on a campus at the start of a new school year when there's just so much hope and optimism and energy and excitement in the air, and you can feel it. A number of our campuses have had their opening convocations over the past week or so, and where their faculty and staff come in and look forward to their very important work for the year, and those are wonderful occasions. I had the opportunity this year to speak at the UW colleges and extension convocation, and it put me in mind of my own teaching days and the first day of class when the students, my day would come in with sharp pencils. Now it's bright computers unsmudged relatively on the screens, and people would be excited and energized and a little nervous. You know, they actually pay attention to you that first day of class because they want to figure out how much work is going to be imposed on them and who this guy Riley is and who this guy James Joyce is that writes funny stuff. And then if I found there's a pattern to this after the first day, and you get maybe 2.5 weeks in and you start to think, boy, these students are just not getting this. I can't, I don't know if I've lost it as a teacher. And you think, where did the admissions people get these students from? Anyway, this is not going to work. And then if you're lucky, third week in, you get a couple good assignments, get to the midterm, and you start to think, wow, some of these students really are going to be interested in this, and they're learning something. I can do this. I can actually teach this course again and maybe get somewhere. And then if you're really lucky, that trajectory goes all the way back up at the end, and you arrive at the end of the course with a big end-of-term paper or a final exam or both, and say, wow, they really learned something here. I've got a group of students who understand and appreciate and want to read Joyce's Finnegan's Wake for the rest of their life. And then it doesn't get any better than that. You go off to your holiday break, all's right with the world, and it doesn't get any better than that for an academic person. But it's great to be at the front end of that trajectory and that the beginning of a new academic year. It's kind of like what they used to say about Zsa Zsa Gabor's 7 Marriages. It's the triumph of hope over experience. For those of you who are
It wasn't James Joyce.
I was going to say, there you go. Regent Crane said, who's Zsa Zsa Gabor? And for those of you familiar with the Beloit poll every year, the Beloit survey about what incoming freshmen know and what shaped their world, there'd be a lot of people saying that. And even worse, Judy, people saying, well, who's James Joyce? And that would be very bad.
We at least now know what part of the semester you chose to go into administration.
That's right. Well, we have, speaking of hope, we have great hope for a new academic leader that we have with us at her first Regent meeting today, and I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce her. We have a couple other new academic leaders with us for the first time, and I'll introduce them tomorrow. But this morning, I wanted to introduce and welcome the new Chancellor at UW Parkside, Deborah Ford. Deborah's over here with us. Welcome, Deborah. Deborah comes to us having been most recently the Vice President for Student Affairs at the University of West Florida. She has taught in the student affairs area during her distinguished career. She's published in her specialty in student affairs, and we're just delighted to have her and her family with us, and we wish you and them all best good luck at Parkside, and we'll work with you on that. Thanks. The other thing I should note is that when she was at the University of West Florida, she had an office right down the hall from Chancellor Dean Van Galen's office at UW River Falls, because he was the Vice President for University Advancement at the University of West Florida. So they are, literally, I see they're sitting together. So it's kind of like the aging rock stars together again when they go back out for that last road tour. So at any rate, I did want to welcome Deborah. And the other two people, Mr. President, I'll introduce tomorrow, and I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for making the trip to Whitewater for today's meeting, and thank you to all the folks here who have made us feel so welcome. Those of us who did the tour this morning, I know, came away already most impressed. We could leave now and sort of die happy, but I suppose we ought to soldier on and continue for the rest of today and tomorrow. The last time the Regents visited UW-Whitewater, I believe, was 7 years ago. And I know a lot has changed over that period of time, and we're looking forward to hearing from Chancellor Telfer and others about all the things that are going on in this campus. Before I introduce Chancellor Telfer, I did want to make just a couple of general observations about what we're going to try to be doing over the next day and a half. There are really, I think, two important themes that are going to be sort of underlying a lot of our conversations both today and tomorrow. One is related to economic development and job creation. Tomorrow we're going to hear from President Riley's Research to Jobs Task Force. We're also going to learn both today and tomorrow about UW-Whitewater's award-winning business education programs. We're going to be asked to approve a new BBA in entrepreneurship on this campus. So there's a lot to both learn, and particularly in these days and times, nothing could probably be more important for us to be talking about than what the university can and should be doing in the area of economic development and job creation. The second main theme, I think, is you could describe as kind of transparency and openness. I know this board over many years has moved more and more to a very strong commitment to making sure that whatever we do open in the open, and we do in the most transparent way possible. We are using streaming audio and video to allow broader public access to the debates and decisions that affect all our campuses. And later this morning, we'll be discussing a significant and rather expensive HRS project, discussion that's already begun with personal briefings for state leaders and extensive coverage in the news media. That conversation will continue today with full board discussion in view of all of our stakeholders. Which brings us to our first speaker, who is also our host, a person who knows a thing or two about being open and accessible, Chancellor Richard Telfer. Chancellor?
Good morning and welcome. Regent President Pruitt, Regent Vice President Spector, President Riley, members of the Board of Regents, all our other distinguished guests, we'd like to welcome you here. We're just delighted you're able to come to Whitewater. We did plan a very beautiful day for you too, and I'm glad that's working out. We're delighted about the opportunity to tell you who we are and show you who we are and just have you get to know us a little bit better. I would like to introduce one of our guests in the audience, and that is Representative Tom Lothian, who is a representative from a district just south of here. Tom, would you please stand? UW-Whitewater is on the move. It's a theme we've been using for the last several years because I think it's true. If you look around UW-Whitewater, we're on the move in a number of different ways. 7 years ago when we had the Regents here, we had a very nice visit. The room that you were in, we don't have anymore. We took that away. And it wasn't because you were there, but we did take that room away. We've done a lot of physical transformations, but we're going to talk to you a lot about some programmatic transformations as well. You're going to hear some from me, but you're going to also hear from a number of other people. Provost Chris Clements will be overviewing our academic plan, and we'll be talking about our connection with LEAP, the Equity Scorecard, and Inclusive Excellence. Vice Chancellor Randy Marnaka will give an update on our physical plan. Richard Van Schoonhoven will speak to you about something called streamlining facilities management. And Ruth Swisher later on will be talking to you about our preparation for the H1N1 flu. And tomorrow, and I really want to stress this for the Regents, tomorrow we have about 30 students coming in to have breakfast with you who are eager to meet you and have the opportunity to chat with you. In the next few minutes, I would like to spend my time telling you about our campus, and I want you to recognize we're only skimming the surface. We have provided for you in the bag that you're getting, or we'll get a little booklet called UW-Whitewater Excels. It gives you information about some of our accomplishments over the past year. I encourage you to look through that booklet, and I'd also encourage you to visit our website to see even more about the campus. If possible, I'd ask that you save questions to the end, because we're going to have a number of people speaking with you, and I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about give the presentations and then answer some questions at the end. UW-Whitewater, as I said, is on the move. We've made significant strides in the areas of our strategic plan. First area is programs and learning. The second area is creating an educator-scholar community. Third is diversity and global perspectives. The fourth is regional engagement. And the final one is personal and professional integrity. To demonstrate what we feel is excitement on this campus, I'd like to highlight for you some of our accomplishments. And I've tried to organize this presentation around 4 adjectives that describe where we are and what we are accomplishing: engaged, relevant, hands-on, and entrepreneurial. Students at UW-Whitewater are engaged. To illustrate, I'd like to show you a short video called Proud to be Purple. This video shows our new freshman students during our fall orientation period as they transition from high school or work and become members of our campus.
We wanted to build connections with the students, so we thought, what can we do to get them excited about being a Warhawk, to introduce them to some of our traditions.
Freshman! Yeah!
I think it's awesome, and I wish I could have done it when I was a freshman. I'm so jealous of these kids.
They are the first ones to do it.
And this will go on for years and years now.
Watching the procession come down Warhawk Drive and into the stadium was something I'll never forget. We wanted to give the freshmen a glimpse as to what they're coming into. We wanted them to run onto the field. They were coming in the visitors' gate.
What's a Warhawk? Yeah, it's our mascot. It's our mascot!
They left through the home gate. We hope that they say, hey, this is home now.
When we ran on that field right there, it was so cool. You saw yourself on a Jumbotron and everything. Just everybody's clapping your hands. It's really cool.
I was so excited to do this, I was screaming. I don't think I stopped screaming. It's just an awesome experience.
Come on, Willie.
It made me feel proud to be a Warhawk.
I know I came in here really nervous about things, and all of this just kind of broke the ice, and it makes me feel like this is my college.
We are painting Warhawk Drive purple so that the freshmen can leave their mark on the university.
Freshman! Yeah!
Everything was cool, from the football players, the cheerleaders, the dancers, and painting the road. I think when you have more traditions at a university, students feel more committed to the institution.
It unites the class.
Just an incredible experience. This is what I wanted. This is what I looked forward to. Everything went right tonight.
It gives us a sense of belonging to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater.
I've been here almost 20 years.
That's what I'm talking about!
This tops the cake.
This video, just for your information, has been a very successful one for it. It has had over 1,232,000 views as of the end of August. So we've had a lot of people look at it, a lot of people get excited about it. And to my fellow chancellors, including some people at your places. We're engaged. We're also engaged through our student organizations. We have more than 170 on our campus. These organizations involve our students in service to the community, in educational and social events, and often in professional development. I've invited some representatives from one of our student organizations to speak for a few minutes with you today. I'd like to introduce Bill Dugan, who's Irving L. Young Professor of Entrepreneurship and the advisor for the Student Entrepreneurs Organization. And with him is Emily Kartheiser. Emily is a two-time president of the organization. So I'd ask Emily to come forward.
Good morning. On behalf of all the student organizations on campus, I'd like to welcome you. CEO is extremely proud and honored to have been chosen to represent the more than 170 student organizations on campus. We're very proud of our accomplishments, especially considering it's only our third year as a chapter. We currently have more than 50 active student members, many of whom currently run their own business or have run one since high school. We're a nationally affiliated organization, and we've been so since 2007. The last 2 years, we've sent large groups of students to the national conference, where we've been awarded 7 national awards. And last year, we were the most decorated chapter of the 400 affiliated chapters with the organization. Since our start in 2006, we've initiated 6 separate business ventures to help support our organization, and we've shown revenues exceeding $30,000 and more than $10,000 in profit. As an organization, we try to offer events and activities that will provide a learning experience to our members. Our most popular is our business plan competition, which is modeled after the governor's business plan competition. This involves the students submitting their business idea and having it pass through a series of judging rounds, which culminates at the final round where the top 5 get the opportunity to present their business plan ideas to a panel of distinguished judges. In the last 2 years, our winners have gone on to help start businesses in the state of Wisconsin, and we've attracted over 135 new business ideas from students all across campus, and we've awarded more than $20,000 in prizes. Just recently, the Milwaukee BizLearn Initiative chose our business plan competition as a model for other Milwaukee 7 area campuses. Another of our activities is our high school outreach program. We send members from our organization to local high schools such as La Follette, Madison, Franklin, and then Whitewater and other local schools, where the students act as mentors and role models to those students and try to get them excited about entrepreneurship, explain the value of entrepreneurship, and get them engaged before they leave for college. And these are just some of the activities that we do as an organization. If you have any questions or would like more information, Professor Dugan and I would be happy to answer after the presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Emily. This is an example really of just one of our student organizations. Through these kinds of organizations, our students are engaged on campus and off. Education at UW-Whitewater is relevant. Students at UW-Whitewater are involved in educational experiences that are relevant to the students themselves, relevant for our communities, and relevant to the state and region. I'm pleased to introduce a number of individuals who are involved in projects funded by a grant from the Merck Foundation. These individuals are, I'm going to read off all the names, and they're all back here with me. Some of them will be speaking, others will not, but they're all involved in this. And they're going to raise their hands when I say their names. Professor Catherine Chan, Professor Elizabeth Harahy, Professor Paul House, and student researchers James Feitzer, Lucas Keene, Kyle Butzine, Jasmine Grafton, Thomas Zimmerman, Danielle Anton. Professor Harahy will begin by talking about the project, and then you will hear from some of the student researchers.
Thank you. Good morning. My collaborators and I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share with you a bit of information about our MERC program. The University of Wisconsin at Whitewater was one of only 14 institutions nationwide to be awarded a MERC, American Association for the Advancement of Science, undergraduate research program grant. This grant will allow us to pay 18 students over the course of 3 years to do research in each of our 3 laboratories. I'd like to point out that additional funding support was generously provided by the College of Letters and Sciences here on our campus. The topic we chose to focus on was pharmaceuticals and personal care products, or PPCPs. PPCPs is a class of contaminants of emerging concern. They have been found in groundwaters and surface waters nationwide, and there is a growing body of evidence that associates them with adverse effects on growth, reproduction, and survival of various aquatic organisms. To date, terrestrial organisms have been very little studied. The primary source of these pharmaceuticals and personal care products is wastewater treatment plants. People wash away personal care products, they excrete drugs and things like caffeine that they ingest, and then they flush away unused or expired drugs as well. The wastewater treatment plants were not designed to process these kinds of contaminants, and it is possible that the disinfection process, which is primarily conducted in this region with chlorine, may change the structure of these compounds and result in additional toxic products. We are investigating the toxicity of the select pharmaceuticals and personal care products that we chose to work with in our laboratory on 2 aquatic animals and 1 terrestrial plant, and also to examine the fate of these compounds when exposed to chlorine, simulating the wastewater treatment process. My student, Jim Feitzer, would now like to present a couple of our key findings to you.
Good morning. My name is Jim Feitzer, and together with Luke Keene, we worked in Dr. Harahe's lab this summer, and we studied the effects of triclocarban, an antimicrobial agent found in hand soaps, as well as caffeine on 2 aquatic invertebrates. What we found over the course of the summer is that while caffeine is toxic to aquatic invertebrates, only at concentrations that are much higher than would be found in nature. So that's good news. Triclocarban, on the other hand, is toxic to aquatic invertebrates at currently detected levels. So this is definitely cause for concern and a need to take another look at our wastewater treatment process. This experience offered me an opportunity to see an experiment run from beginning to end. I got to be involved in all aspects of this experience, and hopefully will be a wonderful lead-in to pursuing this area further in graduate school. And now Kyle Butzine will talk about his experience in Dr. Chan's lab.
Good morning, everyone. So I spent this last summer working in Dr. Chan's lab along with my lab partner Jasmine Crafton, who was not able to be here because she is ill today. So we studied the effects of these PPCPs on land plants, and one question that I think comes up a lot is why would we be concerned about the chemicals on these plants that aren't in direct contact with the PPCP source, that is the surface waters? Well, the fact is that land plants do come into direct contact with these chemicals through various mechanisms, one such being when flooding occurs, wastewater treatment plant waters get into the environment, as well as when partitioned solid from the treatment plants are used on land as fertilizers. So there's currently very little data on the effects of these PPCPs on land plants and how the toxicity of them on the plants correlates with the data on aquatic organisms. So this past summer, our lab tested the effects of 2 high-volume over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, that being caffeine and ibuprofen, on a terrestrial land plant called Arabidopsis, in hopes to apply our results to more economically important plants such as maybe corn. We found that these chemicals in general are safe for Arabidopsis in that negative impacts on growth are relatively limited to moderate to high concentrations of these chemicals. So that's a good thing, but we're also investigating the effects of applying these pharmaceuticals simultaneously and seeing if they have a heightened sense of toxicity to the plants. So we're also going to test metabolites of these pharmaceuticals, as they have different effects on the parental compound. The main effects, or the main lessons we learned this past summer, were working together as a team to come together and solve a real-world problem, as well as communicating between our peers and our mentors. So that's all I have to say, and now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Daniel Anton, who worked in Dr. House's lab.
Hello, everyone. I worked with Tom Zimmerman in Dr. House's lab this summer, in which we studied disinfectants that are needed to control bacterial growth. An unintended consequence of this control is a reaction with pollutants with chlorine. Chlorine is an inexpensive way to treat large quantities of wastewater, but may produce more toxic products. Commonly known and studied chemicals include ibuprofen, triclosan, which is another antimicrobial, and acetaminophen, which provided good ideas for our experimental setup. Our experiments have shown evidence of a chlorine reaction with caffeine and triclocarban, which is shown here with caffeine. Our graph here, we ran two different solutions through a separation machine, and this top one is caffeine alone. And if you notice on the bottom here, there's a lot more chemicals being produced, so that obviously shows that there is a chemical reaction happening. We're interested in these because, as stated before, they could be more toxic than the original product, which would affect land plants and aquatic life. We are currently working on identifying these products and the kinetics of the reaction. This Merck research project was very beneficial to my undergraduate degree in chemistry, not only for my experience, but also for developing lifelong skills that I will need for future studies. We were taught how to read and analyze important scientific research journals, developing our own method for experiments based on these journals, and being able to organize and present our results. It also gave us an opportunity to work outside of our chemistry department with our peers to collect and correlate everyone's results into an overall conclusion. Dr. Harahey?
Thanks, Danielle. I just wanted to quickly summarize by saying we had a great time working in the lab all summer. We worked out in the field as well. We had a lot of collaboration going on between students, between the three labs, and then just quickly summarize by saying we did find that pharmaceuticals and personal care products that are being discharged by wastewater treatment plants in this region were found to be toxic and to have significant adverse effects on some of these organisms. And also that the wastewater treatment process is resulting in additional products, and we've yet to identify some of those products or their toxicity, but that will be our next step. These findings have important implications for places like the Milwaukee River, which receives discharge from multiple wastewater treatment plants. Thank you for your time.
Thanks to all of you. This project is part of our efforts to be involved in a number of areas to be relevant to what is going on. We're part of the Milwaukee 7. If you look at the map for the Milwaukee 7, we're about as far west as you can get and still be in the Milwaukee 7. But we're part of that. We're part of the Water Council, and the kind of research these individuals are doing are part of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to add to that. We have, I think many of you know because you approved it several years ago, we have something called the Science Business Major, and we've developed a water management emphasis within the Science Business Major to try to further that effort. This is an example, and I know you've heard it from all of us on all the campuses about the undergraduate research going on. There's tremendous stuff going on. As you go downstairs to eat later on, there's some posters up there, including posters that the students who presented to you have, so you can see some more of the kind of work that our students are doing. Part of being relevant is preparing students for life beyond the university. We take seriously our obligation to educate students for a global, international world. The following video focuses on Professor Shotan Basu and highlights the importance of preparing students for that world.
What was the problem with the case? But what was the main thing that was a problem in that case? I think I'm definitely out there.
Shotan Basu is not your typical professor.
He's not focused on the grades.
But that's not the only reason his students like him.
He was more focused on you learning the material.
And he wants it to be able to be applied right away.
I feel like when you're in the class, you're not just going through the motions.
Is that important or relevant at all? And the whole idea is help a student find their passion, not their major, because the major will come.
He speaks from experience.
I never even knew I was going to teach. I was an average student in India. Okay, I did pretty decent. But when I came here, this education system just made me flourish. One of the things I figured out about the education system right away is if you want to take it really far, nobody stopped you really.
As a professor, he wants his students to see the same is true for them.
We have one huge project for this class. He says if we do a good enough job, he's actually going to go to like the head people and say we should implement this. So it is very real world.
A real life example I can give you is
as director of the Global Business Resource Center, when Shotan talks about a real world perspective, he literally means the world.
You have to start thinking about things globally. When they're trying to solve a business problem, what if I pushed out this part to Portugal, that part to China, this market in Brazil? They need to build a global decision-making model. But the whole point is if I give them those tools, they will change the world. I believe that.
It's the challenge he issues to students. Make your mark. Make a difference.
Some of them are going to go, who is this guy, talking about this crazy stuff. But there's going to be a big percentage of the class which will be sitting there going, yep, I get it. I get it.
Senior Nick Jensen couldn't get enough.
They actually let me substitute this class for one of the other requirements for graduation.
I am deaf and blind. The teacher is really helpful, and he really seems to get us excited, involved with, the project. You can see he loves teaching.
I teach because I absolutely love what I do. I love what I feel when I come out of my lectures. And after you see those light bulbs go off in few eyes. I mean, I have the happiest job in the world, I think, or the best job.
I know that Professor Basu is in the audience. Would you please stand? And if during the question session, he'd obviously be willing to talk with people, answer questions and so forth. As you can see, we highly value the relevance of what we are teaching and what we are doing to the community and to the world of the 21st century. Learning at UW-Whitewater is hands-on. There are numerous opportunities for students to participate in internships and other experiences that extend far beyond the classroom. Many of the internships involve placements with companies and organizations throughout the region so that the students have the opportunity to experience work in those professional settings. We also have opportunities for students to engage in hands-on learning out of the classroom, but closer to the campus. We'd like to tell you a little bit more about one of those experiences. In our new College of Business and Economics building, which you'll be in for the reception later on, Highland Hall, we have a number of centers for outreach to the local, state, national, and international communities. The Wisconsin Center for Information Technology Services works with small businesses and nonprofit organizations in the region to provide IT support and development to enable those businesses to be successful. I'd like to introduce a number of people associated with that, and then I'll have Dr. Chenoweth come forward. Professor John Chenoweth, Professor Paul Ambrose, they are the co-directors of the center. As you can see from the slide, there are a number of students who've been involved. I think Angela is the one who's here, Angela Bannicky. And then we have two people who are involved with these businesses and nonprofits. One is Jeff Bloom, who's the executive director of Lutherdale Ministries in Elkhorn, and the other is Nels Weiberg, who's proprietor of Babe's Fiber Garden here in Whitewater. So I'd like to turn it over to John now.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to present what are the services that we're providing. I just want to give you chance to understand the scope of what we're doing and how we're reaching out into the region and to focus on the work that we're able to provide students on this campus who otherwise they may have to travel pretty far to do that. Basically, we are a new outreach center in the College of Business and Economics. We started about a year and a half ago, imagining that we would probably be able to complete about 6 projects a year. Over the course of the first year, we had 30 projects from businesses contacting us, businesses and small profits. So while we can provide lots of IT services, primarily our work has focused on creating websites or adding value to existing websites for businesses and nonprofits. And you can see an example of some of those that we have done. Some you may be familiar with. Baumgartner's Cheese Store and Tavern is about our furthest west business. That's in Monroe, Wisconsin. We've worked on the La Comunidad website, which is based in Madison, a bilingual newspaper in Madison. Babe's Fiber Garden, Nels will talk to you a little bit about the work we did on his site and his ability to interact with our students. Lutherdale Ministries, which is close to on the way to Elkhorn from here. So that gives you the scope of sort of the region that we have reached out to. But we've also been able to reach out into through our other business outreach centers, particularly the Small Business Development Center, and we've presented on search engine optimization at the Ideas to Profits conference in Appleton, and we'll do so again with the Wisconsin Dells. And we've also done some local presentations to Chamber of Commerce's about how a small business can get a website off the ground and how they have to, the areas they need to focus on. The center started out as a vision in trying to meet the needs of businesses that were already coming to us and students who are coming to us looking for work. And perhaps they have they're taking 15 credits or 18 credits or 12 credits, whatever that might be, and it's just a little bit challenging them to fit into an internship, which is really needed for IT students to make it into their careers, is to find an internship. And so we created the center, initially partially funded through a Gear Up grant, which is focused on entrepreneurship activities of the campus. And through that, we were able to hire 5 students. And then after that, we've moved into a cost recovery model and basically fund the projects fund the work through the revenue from the projects themselves. Generally speaking, we have 5 students working in the center most of the time. They're typically working 15 to 20 hours a week. We have 2 students who come from our IT infrastructure program on campus, so they're focused very much on the client contacts, building the websites from content management systems. We then also have 2 students who come from our management computer systems program, and they focus on developing new components for websites. So if we can't find an existing product out there that meets a need, then they can develop the components themselves. And then we have a graphic design person. This year we have Angela, and they do a lot of the logo work for us, the overall look and feel of the website. And so basically, as I said, they're working 15 to 20 hours a week, so that's a lot of time to cover and to manage. And we do most of our work now virtually using online tools, which is also a great experience for our students in this field. So with that, what I'd like to do is to turn this over to Jeff Bloom from Lutherdale Ministries, and he can talk to you a little bit about the experience he had in working with our students and how it's helped his business. And then we'll let Nels Weiberg talk a little bit about how it impacted his business.
Good morning. In July of 2008, I was notified by our web hosting company that they were going out of business. And my website would be going down in September. So I had about a month's time to do something. And not being an IT person myself, I'm trying to network and find out what to do regarding that. And I saw an article in the Janesville Gazette about this new program that was being offered here at Whitewater. Now, realize this is in the summer, July, August. I made a phone call here to the number that was listed in the article, and I got connected with Professor Chenoweth, who was on vacation someplace in northern Wisconsin, but called me back. I pleaded my case of, what am I going to do? I'm going to be out of web service. He said, we can take care of it. We can take care of it. So when we met in September, about a week before my website went out of business, he was able to somehow capture all of that and transfer it and keep that system going while we had meetings with the students to talk about what our website needs were and what they could do for us. So within a matter of weeks there in September, the students that I had met with explained what our needs were, what our operation was, went to work on our website, and by October we were live with a brand new website. So we had great interaction with the students. They were extremely helpful in getting this new website up and ready for us. We were wowed. It was a great improvement to our original website. We have since worked with them over this past year as needs arise and things that need to be done to our website. It is a simple call. We tell them what we need, what's going on, and they get right at it. And they've just been fabulous for us. One of the great benefits to us in this process, of course, as a nonprofit organization, the cost of this to us was much, much lower than if we had to go out to some private company and have a whole website designed for us. They have been very good at helping us to understand how we can control those expenses too and how that will benefit us. So it's been a fantastic program that we have tremendously enjoyed. Thank you.
I'm Nels Weiberg. I'm the owner of Bay's Fiber Garden over here on 210 East Clay Street in Whitewater. I've been there for a few years now. I started in 1996 making my first spinning wheel out of desperation to rent an inexpensive spinning wheel out and not have to worry about it. So the first ones I made out of furniture PVC and a wheelchair wheel. And it was quite different than the wood one. It took quite a difference, quite a big problem to beat that wood. Have to have that wood fire or spinning wheel they have by the fireplace. And so I started making them, and then I also started making my own web page. And I made with one company first, and then I switched to another company, and I was doing all the work myself. And when I moved up here to Wisconsin, I got more work and more work. I found some extra help in Green Valley Enterprises in Beaver Dam, and they took over the manufacturing for me, but I still was developing more new products and having to put them on my web page, which seemed like it was taking a long time. And then I saw that ad in the paper, or a story in the paper about University of Wisconsin here starting a little place to help entrepreneurs and to figure out how to improve their website. And I said, man, boy, that's what I need. If I can make my website Web 2, that would be just fine, especially after looking at the little video that they had. And so I called them up, came over, sure, and we got started. And the first thing they did was completely reorganize my website, which it really needed because it was a little bit here and a little bit there as I was growing and had no organizational content to it. Now it is organized and it is helping tremendously. It's bringing me in a lot more business. It's open 24/7 every day of the year, and so it keeps me very busy. Even this morning I got an inquiry from Germany for 3 of my production spinning wheels, and so I have to hurry back and get a quote off to there. And so I've grown quite a dealer network through the website also, and it keeps me very busy. And being retired, I'm not a number counter, so I can't tell you how many spinning wheels I made. I don't feel that I have to count anymore. So, but the main thing, I have really enjoyed it, being retired. I worked harder now than when I had a job, but I'm having fun at it. And that's the important thing. Thank you.
This is some of the hands-on work that we're talking about. You see how our people impact individuals by the work they do outside of the classroom, taking those skills that they learn in the classroom and applying them. I'd like to show one more brief video that gives a sense of how this hands-on learning works in the classroom and really why it's so critical.
Sure you do, sure you do. Come on, be brave. My passion is teaching students how to design video games. Games are important because humans learn through play.
For Elena Bertazzi, play is serious stuff.
That's very effective. Through play, we develop a sense of mastery, a sense of competence, that yes, I can do this.
Elena integrates play into her teaching.
You haven't changed it yet.
Yeah, I did. That says your mama.
Oh, your mama. Yeah.
Her classes are fun. She jokes around.
So we'll feel more comfortable with her.
It feels like we can just ask her any question, you know.
It's by playing with technology that you become comfortable with it, that you're able to not be intimidated by it.
And in that way, she believes play is the path to power.
You look at the people with the most power. They're people who understand technology, and they're almost all men. And I don't like that.
She sees many young women who aren't comfortable with technology. Years ago, she was one of them. Elena had a master's degree in library science when a friend engaged her in computer game design. She only got over her fear of computers because she had to as a single mom.
I needed a job where I could work with a computer and be able to make a living. And so I learned computing technology because I had to maintain my children, because that's what I needed to have to be successful.
What started as a necessity became a passion.
She actually can just code stuff.
You can tell that she knows what she's doing.
You did those in Illustrator? I try to be a role model. Make us excited about this somehow. If there were more women involved in making games, then we would see a lot of different kinds of games. We will also have more women running corporations that run technology. We'll have a female Bill Gates and a female Steve Jobs.
And it should start right here in the classroom.
I teach because it is very empowering to give people the tools to be powerful. That's why I teach.
You've seen a couple of videos from a series that we're doing called Why I Teach. We're a teaching institution. It's very important that we provide outstanding teaching for our students, outstanding learning opportunities. And it's not somebody standing up in the class and talking to the group. It really is involving the students, as I said here, in hands-on learning. The final adjective that I used was entrepreneurial. As you could see from our earlier discussions, we see the importance of helping students be prepared for the workplace of the 21st century. For many of them, their work will be in businesses they create. To that end, as you know, we are asking the Education Committee later today to approve our major in entrepreneurship. That will enable us to be even more successful in preparing students to start their own businesses. As a campus, we're trying to be more entrepreneurial. I'd like to tell you a little bit about a project that we've been working on for the last year in Whitewater, the Whitewater University Technology Park. This is a joint venture of the university and the city of Whitewater. It stems from a study done last summer by North Star Economics. I think most of you know the head of North Star Economics, David Ward, investigating whether a technology park could or should be developed in Whitewater. I'd like to, at this point, introduce two individuals who have been actively involved in this project. One is Kevin Brunner. He's the Whitewater City Manager. And the other is Bud Gayhart, who's Director of the Center for Innovation and Business Development, which includes the Wisconsin Innovation Service Center and the Small Business Development Center at UW-Whitewater. I think, Kevin, you're going first.
Well, good morning and welcome to Whitewater. We're absolutely delighted to have the Board of Regents and all of you here in our community. We think this is a very special place and we're glad to share some of this with you. It's a privilege to tell you a little bit about our plans for the Whitewater University Technology Park, as well as our Whitewater Innovation Center. As Chancellor Telfer stated, we've made some rather remarkable progress developing this 130-acre park, which includes a large public conservancy area, over the last 9 to 10 months. Later this month, we will officially break ground on this very highly and collaborative and creative partnership between the university and the city. We envision a new type of business park for our region that will provide a very green and sustainable environment for entrepreneurial ventures emanating from this campus, as well as the businesses that will support them. We are very fortunate in that we are in the cusp of receiving a very substantial U.S. Economic Development Administration grant, almost $5 million, that we will use to leverage the development of this new technology park. This new park is about a mile east of the campus, and as part of the development, we will be building a new road that will connect the technology park and our existing business park with the campus, as well as to construct the Whitewater Innovation Center. We have a rendering of the building in front of you here. This 40,000 square foot building will provide incubation space for new business startups, as well as for educational support organizations. We are very close to publicly announcing our first major anchor tenant for this facility, and we're very excited about this. This building will be one of the first LEED certified buildings in our city and region. The Living and Learning Center, which is under construction to the west of us here, will be the first, although we might even beat that with this new project if we construct it according to plan. And this new building is intended to be a model for the incorporation of a variety of green building technologies such as geothermal heating and cooling, stormwater design, and low-emission materials. Now I'd like to introduce Bud Gayhart, who will talk a little bit further about our plans for this technology park and the Innovation Center.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning. Isn't that amazing? The artist rendering that you see on the screen here of the Whitewater Innovation Center provides only a hint of what this facility will generate in the area of economic impact. We see this as really the nucleus or the hub of development, and that's how EDA approaches this. The Economic Development Administration looks at this project as really the genesis of renewal for a region. We look at this affecting, in Wisconsin, 4 counties: Racine, Kenosha, Walworth, and Rock. In Illinois, it has drawn in Boone and Winnebago counties. For EDA, this is a new venture. It's the first time that a project has overlapped state boundaries. And they see this as the auto initiative to rekindle direct employment, to see the development of new jobs. And the Innovation Center, as they see it, is where a lot of this new technology is going to be spawned. The Innovation Center is receiving a grant, as Kevin said, of nearly $5 million. The total investment by EDA to this 6-county region approaches $17 million. Over a 3-year period, that's a significant impact. As you saw in one of the previous videos, Shochan talked about the global perspective. And we see that as we generate new businesses in this technology center. Businesses have to approach the startup process from a global perspective. They can't just think about how am I going to do business locally or regionally. They really have to understand that they are globally from the onset. And if they take that approach, they're going to be far more successful as they start these ventures. The design of the building also includes flexibility. That flexibility allows us to adjust size of space depending on the growth needs of the tenants. It allows us to reconfigure space almost instantaneously to meet the needs of those people and those businesses that want to get started here. We see a number of faculty in a variety of disciplines who want to be engaged in this facility, launching research projects, employing students as interns. We also see students out of CEO and other organizations who will want to start businesses as well. All of them encouraged to, again, approach it from the global perspective. To that end, we really see this as a key piece in the complete economic recovery of this southern part of the state of Wisconsin, and we are happy to celebrate that with you today.
In the brief amount of time that we've had to share things with you, we've tried to give you a sense of who we are and how we are on the move. We are, we feel, engaged, relevant, hands-on, and entrepreneurial. We provide our students with outstanding experiences that connect them to the campus and to the community. We place our students in situations where they use what they are learning in workplace situations. The curricula they study are relevant to the current workplace, prepare them for workplaces to come, and benefit the communities they serve now and will serve in the future. The campus itself has become more entrepreneurial and more engaged in helping to create businesses and employment opportunities. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you some of what makes UW-Whitewater a dynamic learning environment. If you have questions and if there is time, our presenters are willing to respond.
Questions, comments from the board or others? Thank you, Chancellor, for an extraordinary presentation. Thank you very much. It is a long tradition, I believe, dating back to the creation of the UW system, and it's usually a good idea to call the roll at the beginning of the Board of Regents meeting.
It's a new administration.
We could chalk this up to a rookie mistake, if you will, and if we can, I would like to ask Regent Secretary Judy Temby to please call the roll.
Regent Bartel.
Here.
Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Conley. Here. Regent Gray. Here. Regent Davis.
Which one? Oh, here.
Right.
Here. Here.
Regent Ebert. Regent Salvo.
Here.
Regent Loftus. Regent Atkinar.
Here.
Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector.
Here.
Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Wingard.
Here.
Regent Womack. A quorum is present.
Thank God. If there wasn't, we'd have a whole other set of issues.
We would.
Now is the time for Regent Smith to convene the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. But before I hand over the gavel, I just wanted to make one comment, and that was to thank the members of this board, all of you, for the time that you've spent in getting up to speed on what is a very complicated HRS project. And I know it extends well beyond the Business and Finance and Audit Committee members. I also wanted to, if I could, just briefly recognize and express my appreciation to Regents Jeff Bartelt and David Walsh, who were and have played an important role in recent days as we learned some additional information about the Huron Consulting Group. They have been extraordinarily helpful in sorting through some most complicated issues, and I'm sure they're likely to share some of their thoughts and those questions as the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee proceeds. But if I may, I will now turn the gavel over to Regent Smith.
Sure. Should we call the roll again of our committee, or why not? Good morning. Here.
Regent Conley. Regent Salvo.
Here.
Regent Walsh. Regent Wingard. Regent Womack.
All right. Well, the first item we are going to take up is the HRS system project, and here's how I think we'd like to proceed. I think Kevin is going to have some opening remarks. We'll also then, Tom Anders will be next, and then James Roth, the CEO of Huron, is here to join us for remarks as well. What I'd like to suggest is, because I think it's so overlapping the three, is that we wait with questions until all three are done. I think it makes sense. If you have some burning question that can't wait until all three presentations are completed, I guess we can entertain that, obviously. But I think we're going to get into a situation you might ask Kevin, and Kevin turns and says, gee, it's Tom, and so I think it might work at best that we wait till all three are completed. Certainly, if we're open and for questions and comments from any regents, not just our committee. You know, we have an hour or so planned for this. My anticipation is, and those who are planning lunch might think about this, that we go beyond the hour, given the subject and the attention and that we should give to this. So if anybody's planning on a new lunch, that's probably going to be, they're going to be disappointed a little bit. So let us, if I could, start out with Kevin.
Thank you, Regent Smith, and let me extend my thanks to Chancellor Telfer for that presentation. I thought the way you linked the students' academic work, their relationships with the faculty, and the outreach based on that to solving some real-world challenges was just right for Whitewater. Nice job. This morning we will be talking about the human resources system, as both Regent Pruitt and Regent Smith have said, and I just wanted to remind the board that this is not the first time we've talked about this topic. You'll recall previous reports that covered our extensive planning process. With those planning efforts, those preparations now winding down, it's time to look ahead to a very complex implementation process. We provided you with some written materials in which we've attempted to lay out the significant challenges we face with HRS, and we shared these documents widely, as I think you all know, with all state legislators, with the governor, with the media. As we described in the paper released last week, this really is just a huge undertaking and a vitally important one. HRS is, in effect, mission control for many of our record-keeping systems and business practices across the UW system. The new system is designed to move us away from relying on an outdated and fragile hodgepodge of programs that present a growing risk of failure, one that would have enormously negative repercussions for every community across the state, where UW employees rely on this system to issue their paychecks, to provide timely tax forms, to track their accrued leave time, and to account for insurance premiums and other vital benefits. Recognizing the importance of those services, we have developed a plan that will move UW's system toward an integrated, flexible, highly secure system that will handle our needs for decades to come. The current outdated system has been in place for about 35 years, and we hope that this new one that we would like to implement will be in place for probably not that long, given the pace of change, but a couple decades anyway. So along with providing an accurate, reliable, secure payroll and benefits system, the new system will enable a host of potential cost avoidances and improved services. Hundreds of isolated and disconnected databases will be retired, freeing up significant time and costs. The new system will ensure compliance, full compliance, with regulatory and legal requirements related to personnel information and record keeping. In the future, when new statutory or regulatory requirements are added, changes will be vastly simpler, less labor-intensive, and more reliable. Implementing this system will be costly, but it's hardly a luxury. Rather, it's a necessity, and one that we need to address now, not later. In some respects, this project is not unlike, I'd say, replacing the furnace in your home. It's a significant investment, and let's face it, it's never a good time to face that expense. And it's not, a particularly glamorous purchase either. What's more, when the new furnace is up and running, nobody will even notice it. It's not the kind of thing you show off at dinner parties, but if you wait until the heat goes out on New Year's Eve, it's too late and much more expensive to regroup and get the heat pumping again with holiday overtime and cold, sullen guests. Let's get a better idea of what we're talking about here and the challenges that are involved. The UW system is the state's largest employer, with more than 67,000 employees. Now, you've heard me talk in the past about 40,000 headcount employees, and that's faculty and staff. But the 67,000 employees includes faculty, staff, and students. And that's a good reminder of how many of our students we employ in a whole variety of ways, and they come in and out of employment status in different ways and different means all the time, which is part of the complication of the system that needs to spit out the paychecks and spit out the tax forms and keep track of whatever benefits are involved there for both undergraduate and graduate students. So 67,000 employees in every corner of the state who depend on our HR payroll system for their paychecks and benefits. If the Courage Vintage 1975 system fails, there will be a major crisis in this state. Just the idea of that, believe me, keeps me up at night. Mortgage payments would be late. Tax forms would be incorrect. The cleanup costs after such a massive failure would just be huge. To implement the new system is a massive, complex undertaking. We're not simply installing a new computer here. What we're doing is redesigning a wide variety of business processes at more than 100 locations to bring the UW in line with current best practices and 21st century technology. This is not a case where an upgrade would do the trick. The old UW payroll system is written in an obsolete computer language, COBOL. Some of us of a certain generation will remember going in college to the computer center with those stacks of punch cards to learn about computer science in a language called COBOL. On top of the language being obsolete, the staff who run it are approaching or past retirement age. And young programmers will not tie their careers to such an antiquated program. We cannot get young people to come in behind the people who are currently running this system. When the people who are currently running this system leave, we will not be able to run this system. As a governing board, you should consider that HRS will help the UW be more efficient, flexible, and responsive. We will have access to comprehensive statewide data in a way we don't now that will better inform strategic staffing decisions all across the system. You should also be comforted by the knowledge that the new HRS will do a much better job of protecting sensitive personnel data, and it's rare that a week goes by that you don't read about or hear about a breach of personnel data in some organization these days. By housing personal information in a single data center built on a modern technology platform, we can ensure that Social Security numbers and other information is better secured and securely monitored and efficiently monitored. In moving forward with this project, we've learned from the past, from the APBS experience, the Appointments, Payroll, and Benefit Systems experience. Formally, when we went through that exercise, some of our UW staff asserted that new software would have to be customized to match their local business practices. Today, we're focusing rather on re-engineering those business practices to match the software's built-in capabilities. Less customization equals lower upfront costs and reduced long-term maintenance. Another important change is the people in charge. From Senior Vice President Andres down to the frontline staff, we've got a new governance structure in place and experienced, qualified experts on the job. As the implementation moves forward, the programmers and project workers will take their cues from a project leadership team, including a certified project manager, Elise Barho, who have years of experience in the private and the public sectors. And Tom Andres, when he gives his presentation, will introduce Elise and some of the other project leaders to you. Let me be clear about this. UW people are driving the project, are making the critical decisions, reviewing every invoice, and keeping the workflow moving ahead. We have about 39 consultants working on the project, and they take their direction from us based on a detailed blueprint 2 years in the making. 39 consultants working on the project, and now 64 UW employees working on this project, working together. That planning blueprint was developed through a process that identified every opportunity we could find to minimize and reduce costs and to maximize success. In its April 2007 report, the Legislative Audit Bureau found that most problems with complex IT projects resulted from inadequate planning. Maybe not a surprise. We've heeded that LAB finding and put very strong emphasis on thoroughgoing planning for this project. During the planning phase, We've made tough choices to help control costs. We're being parsimonious about modifications and customizations. A case in point is the what I'll call the 9/12 issue. UW faculty members with traditional appointments are paid over 9 months in equal payments. Some professors would prefer to have their 9-month salary spread over 12 months. After extensive review, however, the HRS team decided not to pursue the modifications that would accommodate that preference, which we would all like to be able to do, admittedly. Some of our faculty who would like to have that done will be disappointed. I acknowledge that, but we'll save about $1.5 million over the next decade by not accommodating that preference, and we thought that saving, for everybody's sake, ought to win out. Another important feature of this project is our strong commitment to transparency. Any changes to the project cost, timing, or scope will be reported to the Regents. Also, as required by law, UW System provides regular reports to the Regents and the state legislature on all large IT projects. The first report of that kind was provided in March 2009, and the next report is due to the legislature this month, and we will be forwarding that after the discussion today and tomorrow on this project and the other projects over $1 million. So the bottom line, literally, for this project will be $81.4 million. It's a big number, a very big number, but I want you to know that it does compare favorably with the costs of similar projects at other similarly sized universities. As Tom Andres will explain further, we will not ask the state for any additional resources to carry out this project, nor will we ask students to shoulder these costs. We've been saving for the down payment, and we have a plan to spread the costs over a number of years, which Tom will explain, just as you might with that furnace that I referred to a little while ago. So today, we are asking the board to approve the overall HRS implementation plan. We are also asking the Regents to vote on the implementation budget for FY 2010 only. Down the road, the Board of Regents will have the opportunity to approve budgets annually and receive regular updates. In summary, then, this is a vast and a vitally important project. Once fully implemented, HRS will provide efficient, accurate, and secure record-keeping of payroll and benefits for all our employees. It also offers a host of potential cost savings and improved services that will benefit us for years to come. And just let me say before I turn the floor over to Tom that I hate the notion of spending $81.4 million on this. Why? Because I know what $81.4 million could do to help improve our faculty and staff morale and productivity, to help get us better retention and graduation rates, to help us do a better job with academic advising, to help us make our campuses more secure, and I can go on and on with the list of worthy things we could spend this money on, that things that I think most of us would say are closer to our core mission of what we're about, of what we're here for. On the other hand, I think this. I think we are on a train that's going to run into a wall. This system is going to break. There is not a question about whether this system is going to break. There is only a question about when this system is going to break. The technology will break, or the people will leave who run it, whom we can't replace, or both. Now, there's nobody in this room who would rather say than I, let this cup pass from me. Let the next guy sitting in this seat have this conversation with the next Board of Regents. And I'm sure all of you sitting in your seats would like to have your successors have to take this project up and not be taking it up now. But I've become convinced since I came into this job 5 years ago and took a look at where we were with the first project, which was a failed implementation, which I cut off when I realized it was going to be a failed implementation, through the planning for this new project, that we need to do this. Because if we don't, at some point, and I can't tell you when, at some point, we're going to wake up and not be able to issue paychecks. We're going to wake up and find we can't keep track of our employees' retirement benefits. We're going to wake up and find we don't know who took sick leave when. And then all those ripple effects will cascade out across the state. So I just don't think it's responsible for us, knowing what I believe we know, to say we can risk leaving it go and let our successors deal with it. That would be nice. And maybe that would happen. Maybe the breakdown will happen sooner. But it will happen. So this is one of those situations in my mind where we need to hold our nose and vote to do what's necessary to do, simply put. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Tom and ask you not to hold your nose during his presentation, because even though he has great powers of concentration, he might find that distracting. So, Senior Vice President Andrews.
We talk a lot. I guess you probably remember some of the points that were made in the paper that was put out. Particularly, I want to recognize Dave Giroux and his people in that little 7 or 8 page paper that you've seen a couple of times. I think it really made a difference in terms of putting out an understanding of what we're trying to do. But we have been pretty down on both Chevy Novas, the 75 Chevy Nova, and furnaces. And that's not the intent here, okay? I have to have a little light moment here. One of the things that I think is really going to be important is understanding there's a lot of people behind this project. And since we've started the planning, probably even before that, and moving into the planning and now into implementation, a lot of work, a lot of effort, and very dedicated people. I'd like to recognize some of those people right now. Ed Meechan, who's the Associate VP, working in the system, really sort of the key person in coordinating all of the aspects of this. He works closely with Lori Dockin, the IT Project Director. Lori has to provide a lot of responses to me on a lot of issues, and she is absolutely outstanding. Darryl Bazell, the Vice Chancellor for Administration at Madison, key component in the success of the project. Greg Deemer, Vice Chancellor for Business Affairs at Stevens Point. Carl Sparks, the Director for Human Resources at Milwaukee. Kathy Pletcher, CIO at Green Bay. Elise Barho, she is the project manager. She is, as I would view this, the heart of the project. We've had so many meetings, had so many discussions about budget, about working with consultants, working with the staff, all sorts of things. And she really provides a level of expertise and patience, to be quite honest, with the process. She's been great. Greg Lampe, Provost with UW Colleges. Carla Rotz, Madison, Special Assistant to the Vice Chancellor. Sue Chamberlain, actually Sue Chamberlain and Al should stand up together on this in terms of our HR at the system level. Donna Weber, Director of Human Resources at Eau Claire. And Glenn Nelson and Dwan Shuck. These two individuals are sort of heading up the activity on the connection, the interface of the financial system into the HR system, and that has been quite a complex adventure as well. But I want to thank everybody, and I know there's going to be a lot of other people that are part of this, but we have another 2.5 years of this, so keep it up. So that's what we're going to do. That's kind of a joke, too. What is HRS? What you're going to see today is sort of a quick background on what HRS is, why it's necessary, and I think Kevin has given a great background on the necessity, when it will be implemented, and how much it will cost. We'll go through a number of pieces of both the longer-term cost and then the 2010 cost as well. There's a number of components to HRS. I'm going to give you kind of the four main pieces, but understand there are many, many subsets to this, which makes it even more complex. We've got benefits administration, and as you can see, that includes benefit plan procedures, eligibility verification, enrollment management, the human resources component, affirmative action, compensation, personnel-related budget functions, and so forth. Payroll, including administration, payroll process, so forth, and time leave management. And there's, like I say, there's an awful lot more to this, but we'll leave it at that right now and make sure that as we move into this, you'll get a better understanding of how we eventually come to some determination both on the tasks of what we're going to be doing and on the costs. What we're trying to do, and again, this goes back a little bit to what Kevin said, what we're trying to do is do something that's more modern, more current, and we're creating something that will be in compliance with current regulatory legal requirements, something that is much more secure in terms of our data. We do a lot right now to keep data secure, but much more than we really should have to do under other ways of doing things. And also expanding our reporting capacity to be more responsive to not only internal needs, but to the needs externally for people looking for information. Just to give you a sense of the planning structure, and again, all of the people that were introduced are sprinkled throughout that structure. And really just to point out that you can see at the foundation of this, you've got the team that connected in with the campus task groups. Those were really the point at which there was a lot of the initial discussion, what we needed to do, how we were going to approach it. That team continues on working on the business processes pieces. As you can see, it outlines the four areas that they work with. They connect with the steering council, or the steering committee. They connect with the project team management. There's just a great deal of interaction up and down the line. And then the ultimate decision making occurs up at the Service Executive Center Committee. So just to give you a sense, it's a pretty good planning structure. There's a lot of discussion about the success of the program. And the success of the program is in part certainly built on all of the people that I've introduced today. But in reality, it can only be successful with a strong consulting partner. And what we think we're looking at right now is a pretty good partnership. The Huron Consulting Group, as suggested up here, was chosen through the competitive RFP process and has had extensive experience. Right now, they are working on 5 Big Ten campuses. They are working with 6 Ivy League schools. They have worked with many systems. They've worked literally with all of the Big Ten schools over the last 5 or 6 years. Very, very strong experiences. The agreement, we're crafting an agreement, and much of it is done right now. One of those pieces is specifying milestones that must be met, or there would be penalties. Right now, as we're going forward, understand that we have been in a partnership with Huron for the last 9 months. We already are working with them. They are already providing us the services. We have quarterly reports that provide specific deliverables that that they have to provide, and we have to, at the same time, do our side of the bargain as well. So again, that's something that's continuing. But if in fact there are issues and problems, any kind of performance issues, then there are penalties. We have a 60-day termination notice. Obviously not something that we want to deal with, but if there are performance issues, that is a place that we can go if need be. Requires immediate notification when there is a resource issue that impacts performance. Okay, there's a number of pieces to this. First, we have been talking with them, well, actually well before even when they were hired, when we were going through the RFP process, what they could do, and we talked at some length about cost, timing, staffing, and on and on. Some of the areas that we've been able to, I think, really make some sound connections on, is particularly in the area of staffing, is that they have very key staff. They're people who teach our people. They have special expertise. And if they lose one of those staff members, there's a real loss for the overall project. What we've been able to work out is that they are going to work, and obviously they do this on all their projects. We're not unique in this case. But they will be providing as best they can within a fairly significant retention program, opportunities and incentives for those key people to stay. What we're looking at right now is that, okay, that is great, and we really appreciate that. What if somebody leaves? What we've also worked out is that if a key staff member leaves, that they will have 10 business days to fill that position. And if they don't, there would be a $100,000 penalty. Similarly, if it's not filled within an additional 10 days, there's another $100,000. Now, we've been able to work that out because they feel very strongly about their capacity to provide the service, and that in some regards, that's what they would normally do anyway. But we want to make it very clear of their commitment to our project, and if there are any issues that come up, there would be areas that we would have recourse. We met with the CEO, Jim Roth, and again today you'll be meeting with him, and we talked about their financial situation, about the clients, about staffing, and at great length. And we were seeking their assurances on their commitment to the project and their ability to meet the needs over the long term. And it really came away quite positively, I think. I have also been having ongoing discussions with a number of people in their organization since that restatement, since the issues that have come up regarding any financial concerns that would be raised. I think I have a pretty good understanding of them now, and as we get deeper into this, we can certainly talk more about that. Now, having said all of this, just to make sure, Huron has been an excellent partner, and we really want to emphasize that. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about this and respond to some of the questions that you might have after Jim has been able to talk. This last piece, just so that you know, we have an open process that if, in fact, we want to get more support out of Huron, or if we want to reduce their support, we have the opportunity to sit down and say, you know, I think we can, some of our staff can take on that project, and we can do that. There is a good deal of flexibility from that standpoint as well. Okay, I think Kevin has really hit the areas of why we need it. First of all, the system is very outdated. It's vulnerable. There's inherent risk in that. Right now, where we're looking at talking about best practices all the time, the basic structure doesn't even have that capacity. It's very inflexible. And we use a lot of these sort of connections with building projects and with capital. And I think as you look at a data system that's 35 years old and you talk about deferred maintenance in the same context that you do with a building, there really is just a point at which there's diminishing returns. We just can't, we can semi-maintain it, but we can't do anything new or special. And that's a huge concern for us. What other advantages do we have of the system, on the system? We've got campus's paperless workflow. We've got, again, Kevin mentioned the much more protection in terms of security, Social Security numbers, bank accounts, integrated staff, faculty staff, student payrolls. Sounds sort of, some of these things sound like, what's the big deal? Well, we haven't been able to do these things. And recruitment and retention efforts streamlined. Again, very fragmented in terms of how we approach this right now. And we lose the legacy system, the mainframe, which will also be quite valuable. We need more consistency in what we do in data integrity. What we can do now at the campuses, we can do consistently, and we can make sure that everybody is sort of on the same page. We can't do that right now. Reporting capability will be enhanced, better planning, analysis of our workforce, timely notification of hires and terminations. Again, that sounds sort of strange. What's the big deal? Well, as Kevin mentioned, there's 67,000 potential names roaming around in our, or more if you look at multiple positions, within a payroll and a budget period of time. Changes are ongoing. They're continuing. And anytime we start to find that we've got people on board that shouldn't be on board, or people that left 3 years ago, we know we've got problems. So that's actually a very important part of this. No more manual calculation. Wouldn't think that would be a major part of what we're doing anymore. Common database for our key parts of the HRS program. And then lastly, we've got the comprehensive security program for HRS. question has come up about the history, and let me just briefly say that I think the system has recognized the need for the change for many years. I can go back at least, I wasn't here, but I can go back at least 10 years and see where there's been discussions of replacing HRS, and I'm guessing it went before that. The Appointment Payroll and Benefits System, the APBS, was begun in 2001, and it was discontinued in July of 2006. And why was that? There really was, it's going to come back to one point that's pretty simple, but there just wasn't a good understanding going into it of the magnitude and the complexity. And this is not intended to be really negative about the people that were doing this. I think there was a certain direction that they were being given, and perhaps there was just a lack of depth and understanding where this was going to go based on the needs of the system. And secondly, kind of seeing too late in the process that it wasn't going to work. That as it got deeper into the process, the concern was, well, wait a second, you're not including this feature, you're not including this, we need to modify that. And as it turns out, that's what's going to create more cost, and in the end, it just didn't work. The moral of that story is simple: much, much more planning, better communications. What we learned is that you have to have from the beginning a clearer understanding of the features that you want in the system. There's got to be that understanding. If there isn't, then midway through the process, you're going to run into problems. You need to clarify the degree to which the features are compatible with the software. We keep talking about this business process review and fit gap. Extremely important in what we went through in the planning process to get to the point that we're at right now. Clarify what the system will provide. No surprises. There were surprises last time. We think inevitably there's going to be surprises. There's going to be issues that we weren't aware of, or the state may say, I've got a new set of regulations, a new set of requirements that we'll have to build into this. But generally speaking, we feel pretty positive about it. And then finally, producing a detailed implementation plan that has the key dates, talks about funding. And again, that's really what we're talking about today. We have completed the implementation plan. We've got the dates. We've got the funding lined up. Scope of the project, 67,000 faculty and staff, site served. We show 26 university and colleges. There's also obviously many, many off-site locations that would take this greatly beyond 100. And again, the business process piece is the complexity. There's over 600 different processes that have been reviewed and try to connect with. We keep talking about regulatory requirements, legal requirements. We have to make sure that when this is done, we're meeting those requirements as well. Here's the plan in terms of phasing in what would be done when. 77% of the work will be completed by June of 2011. Now, that doesn't mean everything goes live, comes on, and we're sort of done with 77%. It means a lot of the technical work. There'll still be some testing. There'll be some other things that have to be done, and as suggested in the box at the top, there's going to be sort of a staggering of the reports as they come out. But by the time we get to March 2012, we should be in a pretty good position in terms of go live and having everything in line. A lot of what you see here is testing. There's going to be a lot of testing between in that one-year period between April of 2011 and going into March of 2012. Cost, $12 million for planning. Those are dollars that have been spent already. Those have provided us with the basis for really for the direction that we're going right now. Additional, we'll be looking at $61.5 million specifically for the human resource system. That includes a contingency of about $5.5 million. That meaning there's dollars that are unallocated, and ideally if we didn't have the need for all of those dollars, we would have a savings. But I'm not guaranteeing that. And then $7.2 million for the financial system interface. Very complex process of taking, we don't have a PeopleSoft related shared financial system, so we have to make various interfaces and connections which within a payroll benefit system is fairly involved and complex. $81.4 million in total. 95% of the costs are for staff, UW staff, and the consulting service staff. So this is labor intensive. And in the end, when we look at this a little bit more, you see that it's derived from the numbers of hours worked. And in the end, that's the key kind of building block. What we're looking at is finishing the project, as I suggested a little bit earlier, in 5 years, or by 2012. Probably the place to really focus on is in 2010. You can see we've in the brown there. The planning is finished, done. We're looking at now the $33.5 million for implementation as we move on out for this year, and we'll look at that a little bit closer. And then 2011, 2012, we'll be bringing that back to you. You're not going to be approving budgets for 2011 and 2012 today. We'll be bringing those back, but we're looking at 2010 specifically. Okay, source of funding. Where does the money come from? We're going to be seeing $12 million in rebates from a Microsoft settlement. There's a nationwide class action suit that we would benefit by $12 million based on the equipment that we've bought over the years. $19 million saved for HRS. Specifically over the last number of years, dollars have been set aside to move against the total cost. And the $19 million is about 25% of the total cost. The remaining dollars are going to be funded through what is called, it's an operating budget resource that we have at the system level. Typically, what we would have used those dollars for is to offset lapses, if there are utility shortfalls, or other unbudgeted expenses. I think we saw the critical need to make sure that we had the funding up front and through this process, as opposed to the other resource would have been going back to campus operating budgets and developing an assessment and saying, can you each come up with so many millions of dollars to get us through this over this 7-year period of time. So we think this works out pretty well. Obviously, we're still going to have lapses in the future, and we may have utility shortfalls, and then we'll have to go back to the campuses in those instances so that they're still part of that solution. Is this a reasonable budget? I think I understand in a lot of cases how frustrating this is, because $81 million, it's personal services, it's number of hours. What does all that mean? How do you make any sense of that? Just initially when we looked at this and we started saying, okay, here's what we're coming out with in a range, we started to just look at some other major enterprise projects, particularly in the Big Ten, but also throughout the rest of the country. And many of them were done 2, 3, 4 years ago, so actually if you started to adjust them, they'd be more expensive. But they were all sort of in the 60, 80, there was one up to $150 million. And you really can't compare. It's not an apples to apples. We can't say exactly what we're doing is comparing exactly to what Ohio State did or Illinois. But I think what we're able to say is this seems to be in the ballpark. So that's one point of comfort on that. We worked very hard with the consultants, and frankly we continue, to figure out how we can sort of reduce those costs. There was a lot of concern early on about the hourly rates that the consultants would be getting, and there was a certain amount of press on that. We've worked pretty hard on bringing those rates down. We've also looked at our overall project and said, can we cut back the scope? Do we really need to do certain things that will ultimately cost us $3, $4, $5 million? In the long run, we may have to do some of that. But right now, we said, let's cut back, and maybe we can do more of that on our own in the future. And we've also had this extensive planning that I keep talking about really was intended to look at the business processes, but to try to model something that had as few modifications as possible. You do the modifications of the software, it costs more money. And we're not trying to avoid a lot of the realities of modification that we might have to make, but I think we did look at it very closely. And as you can see, as a percentage of the total costs, it was pretty limited. Kind of going back to the frustration piece, how do you know that this is good? What is it that tells us this? When you think of the initial project, when we looked at the project manager box earlier, there's 4 areas. There's business processes review, there's technical development, there's testing, and then there's what's called change management, which relates to a lot of communications, training, and so forth. That structure provided the sort of the umbrella through which we looked at the regulatory requirements, as this says, the business processes, and tried to look at specific tasks. What is it that we had to do to meet and accomplish the various requirements? All of that, when we could basically winnow it down to the basics, led to the numbers of hours that we would have to work, whether it was a UW staff member or a consultant. Then you looked at sort of the allocation and the expertise between the groups. But what it all does come down to is taking specific finite tasks that relate back to these very broad areas of business processes, technical development, testing as the structure, and you're identifying the number of hours that are needed to accomplish the tasks. I mean, that's the basic building block. So that should make you feel very comfortable now about knowing how this project was developed. Actually, there is a lot of detail. I apologize for joking, but there is a lot of detail that we've got that could be laid out at some point that really identifies how the hours are derived, what's most important, priorities, and so forth. I think, again, the planning has been quite useful. Hey, back to the sort of the capital piece of this. Capital project, data infrastructure. Pretty much see those as very similar. We're not going to have a 50-year building or a 60-year building, but we are looking at a data infrastructure that should be in the range of 20 to 25 years. Again, as Kevin said, it's very possible that there's going to be changes in, we may be in a software situation now which will be the equivalent to COBOL in 10 years. You never really know. But what we do have with this is a lot more flexibility to make changes with this software, much more capacity to do things that clearly we can't do with COBOL. Accountability. We'll be bringing back reports to the Business Finance and Audit Committee, to the board. We will be looking at timing, cost, all aspects of that. I would be coming back to Business Finance and Audit or the full board, as it may be required, that if there are any exceptions, if there are issues, if there's problems, I would be bringing those back and offering a plan as to how we would be dealing with that. Already mentioned the requirement of the consultant to provide immediate feedback where they may have an inability to provide the services that we've basically got deliverables, got agreements on. We're going to be looking at establishing an implementation timeline that will be used to follow the progress of the tasks. Okay, there is a very sort of clear process that we're going down with specific deliverables. So as there is interest and concern, there is going to be a fairly, I think, direct sort of way of communicating what the progress is at given points of time. Well, again, I think Kevin made the point on this. It's tough to think that if we don't move forward or there's some problem right now that we see with all of this, the question is, if not now, when? I mean, there is no doubt that this is going to have to be implemented at some point. And again, I'm not trying to overdo that point, but we're looking at increased cost, risk, inefficient processes. Continue to use the legacy system. We still have to implement in the future. And I think as we start looking further down the road, and if we were to think about stopping the process, doing something differently, we're going to be looking at added costs. The last one, just to sort of highlight that one of the areas that we talked about that you would be approving would be the budget for this fiscal year. And what you see here is we try to show the full $12 million in planning. That includes $4 million for this fiscal year. What we're really looking at then is the additional funding that we're going to be using from this point on for implementation. So you get a sense, again, of, you can see there's $3 million in contingency that may or may not be used. 95+% of this is related to services through the consultants and through our own staff. Again, it's labor related. But I think as we begin to look at this and we talk about it, we'll be able to come back with examples of specific deliverables, what is being done, when it's being done, and provide you, again, I think with some sense of comfort in what we're doing. What I'd like to do now is introduce Jim Roth, CEO for Huron Consulting. And Jim, I think, has some opening remarks, and then we'd be happy to answer questions, as will I, as needed.
Good morning. I want to thank you all for taking the time to have this discussion. I'd like to say a few things about Huron Consulting Group first, just to help put the remainder of this discussion in some perspective. I'll keep it brief, but I think some of these comments will help help you with some of the questions that are coming up shortly. Huron Consulting Group has about 1,500 employees. We work across the country and on an average day we have about 700 different clients. We've been in business since May of 2002. I was one of the founders of the company, and we've had a fairly rapid growth during that period of time, and currently have revenues that are just south of $700 million is what we're estimating. The largest part of Huron Consulting Group is our health and education practice. And prior to July 31st of this year, I led that practice. It is by far and away the largest segment within Huron, and there are obviously two components to it. One of them is a higher education practice. One of them is a healthcare practice. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the higher education practice because it's clearly the most relevant to this discussion today. The higher education practice I've been working actually in higher education for about 20 years in the business of higher education. People often say, well, what exactly does that mean? And I typically tell them that it's easier to describe what we don't do rather than what we do. We don't teach. We don't conduct research. We don't treat patients. But we assist our clients with the business of running large, complex research universities. Our focus has always been the 100 largest research universities in the United States. And among that, we have served about 85 of the 100 largest, so we've got a very deep market penetration among those universities. Why research universities? There's an element of complexity, which you all in this room are very familiar with, that exists at research universities, and that happens to be where we really focus our efforts to look at the business aspects of it, whether it be strategic, operational, technology, financial, or even running and helping manage the research administration. That's our business. We don't do this as a hobby. This is our core business. There are other consulting firms that periodically will do different things in higher education and also do them in different industries. That's not the case with our higher education group. This is all we do, and we have a very extensive experience doing just this. We have, as Tom mentioned, we have worked with we've worked with so far, in the last year, we've worked with 9 of the 11 Big Ten schools. In about 2 weeks, we're about to start working with the 10th Big Ten school. Today, we have existing contracts with 5 of the Big Ten schools. So this is what we do, and we're very prevalent in terms of our focus in this area. On any given day, we probably have 40 different universities across the country that we're working on a variety of issues and topics. And so the point of this is to say, again, this is not a hobby for us. This is what we do, and we feel very comfortable and competent about doing just that. On July 31st of this year, our company, which has been a publicly traded company since October of 2004, on July 31st of this year, so about 6 weeks ago, we announced that the company was going through a major restatement. In other words, we had to restate our earnings over the last 3 years, and at the same time that we disclosed that we were going to have a change in the senior management of our company, including the CEO. and the board of directors asked me to take over as the CEO of the company. I had been running the health and education practice, which again is about 60% of our whole company, and I was also one of the founders, so I felt very comfortable taking over. But the restatement itself was a very unfortunate event for our firm. It certainly is not the type of thing that I recommend anybody want to go through. But in essence, there's a lot of technical accounting. The restatement was attributed to a very technical and not necessarily intuitive accounting issue relating to companies that we had acquired over the past 4 or 5 years. And there is certain accounting that relates to how transactions involving those acquired companies have to be handled. We did not handle those transactions properly. We did not account for them properly, and that caused the restatement. The most notable impact of the restatement, none of this affected any of the cash, none of the payments that we made were inappropriate at all, it didn't affect our underlying businesses in the sense that our businesses remain the same, but it did cause us, through the accounting rules, to go back and restate our earnings, and I'm sure there'll be other questions later. But the biggest impact, there was a significant drop in our stock price, and it has since recovered some, but not entirety. But I think the biggest issue that many of our clients were concerned about when this all became public on July 31st was, is the company going to be okay? And then perhaps more narrowly, are the people are the Huron consultants that are working on the projects for those clients, are they going to stay with the company? And for those clients where we were in the middle of proposing, they wanted to know, are the people that you proposed actually going to be the ones that are going to stay with us? So all very valid questions. And so that was really the two things that we've talked that have really been the focus of much of the discussion since it happened. Is the company going to be okay? Are the people going to stay? And so here we are now 6 weeks after this unfortunate event, and I'm pleased to say that we have not had a single person leave the company as a result of the restatement. I'll get to more of that in a second. And at the same time, we have had our clients, our current clients have been extremely supportive, and we have continued to win new clients, including some of the Big Ten, but also including many universities across the country, and in our other businesses, also many other non-university and non-healthcare clients. We have been continued to win business at a regular pace. Every day we get new work, just as we always have done prior to this event, and that pace is continuing at a way that it always has before. And so there really has been a very, very steady flow of new work coming in, which has given us a lot of comfort to say that we're actually, the company is doing just fine, and our people have stayed. And so will there be changes over time? Will people leave? Inevitably, people leave. In the consulting business, on average, it's not unusual to have 18 to 20% of the people leave during the course of a year. And our company actually historically has had far less than that leave. We've had a very good track record for retaining our people. And I think so far, even 6 weeks into this, the fact that we have not had anybody leave because of the restatement further reflects a unique culture that exists within our firm that I think makes it a very attractive place to work. And you combine that with the strength of our core business, particularly the one that's here relevant to you all here, is the health and education business, where we have the largest consulting firm in the country that focuses on the business of higher education. We have the second largest healthcare consulting firm in the country, as was noted last week by Modern Healthcare when they came out with their annual rankings. And we have a very strong core business, and we have not seen that core business change at all. So what does that mean for the University of Wisconsin system and this existing project? The obvious questions you all had was, you're in the middle of a very expensive and sensitive project. Is the company going to be okay? Are the people that are working on the project and are slated to work on the project, are they going to stay with us? And we have taken many strides to make sure that the people are going to be, the people that we have internally are going to be comfortable staying. And we are also have, I think so far, clearly demonstrated that not only are our existing clients across the country staying, but they're actually continuing to come to us at the pace we always anticipated, even prior to this event, with new work. They're comfortable with the reputation that we have. They're comfortable with the way we go to work, we do our work. They're comfortable with the way we run our projects and partner with our clients. and I am very confident that that approach is going to be exactly what you're going to see here for the remainder of this project. So I think I'm going to stop there. I know there's probably many questions, but I wanted to give that background and perspective just before we got into questions.
What I would propose to do now is questions that any of you would have, either for Mr. Roth or Kevin or Tom at this point in time, and we'll go around the table to try to bring some order to this. And I'm looking at Mr. Felbo, Regent Felbo. Do you have a comment or a question to start off?
I do have some questions. And I have to preface it to say in the business I was in, IT was a big part of it. I never did understand it. And it is difficult to allocate resources to something that you know there's benefit from, but you don't fully grasp what the benefit is. I do have a few questions. I'd like to know, first of all, we have actual expenditures. They're a very small amount of the total project, but we do already have actual expenditures for 2008 and 2009. And I think it was $1 million in 2008 and 6.9 in 2009. And I'd like to know how we're doing on our actual expenditures versus our plan for 2009.
Okay, for 2009, we were looking at the end of August at being at an additional $4 million. That was sort of the where we talk about the $4 million. The $4 million would be the planning component, and then from there we would be looking at that additional $33.5 million going in. So I'm going to guess that we're probably maybe $5 or $6 million into 2010 within the remainder of the 33.5 that we would be spending for 2010.
Okay, so let me try and understand that. We had approved $6.9 million for 2009.
Right.
To date, in 2009, we've spent more than that.
No, I'm sorry. In 2009, we've spent the $7 million is what we spent.
Okay.
And we've spent the additional. We're in fiscal year 2010 right now.
Yes.
So we've spent an additional $4 million, and I'm going to guess it's probably closer to $5 or $6 million going beyond the planning.
So $4 million on the planning and part of the implementation.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. What is the funding vehicle for the $45 to $50 million piece over 7 years?
Those are dollars that we're going to be getting directly from our operating budget.
But you have to pay this out.
Okay. We would be. We have an operating reserve that we essentially would take the difference out, and then we'd be like.
So you replenish the reserve.
Exactly.
It's our own funds, and we'll replenish it back.
Yep.
It's okay. That may be important for everybody to understand. And then the other question I have at this time is you talked about in this budget is the UW staff expenses. Is that new staff or is that existing staff that we're allocating to this project?
It's a combination. You would have staff that are existing that are allocated fully to that project, but there is also other UW staff that are working on other things outside of HRS. Because we have to meet the needs of the project, we have to hire additional HRS staff just for that project, both with the UW and with the consultant.
Okay. Thank you.
Jeff, you have anything?
Well, I will first acknowledge that when it comes to information technology, I speak COBOL.
Want to speak?
Because I speak COBOL.
Yeah, bring that over a little bit, Jeff, so you can. There you go.
Here.
You can don't give me
that. That's a message, isn't it? Yeah.
You're done. No, I don't have any significant expertise in information technology, but I do have considerable expertise in the subject of corporate law and securities law, which is what I practiced for 35 years. In fact, I was a regulator of securities. I was the state securities commissioner in Wisconsin for most of the 70s, so I worked with the SEC on matters of the type that Mr. Roth described, and since that time I've been working with clients on the other side, dealing with issues of that sort. So when I learned of the restatement of Huron's financials and the issues that are developing out of that, I have been consulting with Tom and with President Riley and with Regent Walsh and Regent President Pruitt on these subjects, trying to sort it out, basically not to suggest that we are evaluating the ethics of the company or the restatement, whether it's proper or not proper, or even how it happened, but rather what is the effect going to be of Huron's ability to provide the services that they promised to provide under the contract. So I took a look at Huron's public documents, the documents that have been filed with the SEC, other press releases, other things that Huron has produced internally, some newspaper clippings. I looked at the contract that currently exists with Huron to see what rights we have, what protections are in that contract right now. And then last week, we had a meeting with Mr. Roth and several other executives to talk about these issues and specifically ask, I think, some pointed questions about how this happened and what it means for their ability to perform. And I would say this, and I have a question that I want to ask Mr. Roth following up on that, although he knows I've asked many questions previously. I would say this, that the accounting issue that led to this is really quite arcane. It is something that does not arise very often. I really haven't seen it in the transactions that I've been involved in my career. It has to do with how the money that is paid to purchase a company is accounted for if that money does not go to shareholders in relation to their equity holdings in the company. And that is what didn't happen in this case. It didn't involve extra payments by Huron. It didn't involve kickbacks. It just involved an accounting issue, and that money, which was referred to as non-cash compensation, had to be reflected in the company's financial statements and wasn't. So that had the effect, I think unintended effect as far as I can tell, of overstating their earnings during the last 3 years, and those earnings now have to be restated. As Mr. Roth said, it didn't involve cash to the company or cash flow or anything like that. It isn't a good thing to happen, but it has to be repaired. Now, in my experience, when this happens, there are a lot of other things that flow from that. And I don't even know if we know at this point what other things are going to happen. One of the things that happens, of course, is that it has an effect on the price of a public company stock. When the earnings are restated and reduced, shareholders aren't happy. And the price of Huron's stock declined precipitously as a result, as Mr. Roth said. That makes shareholders who purchased at the high very unhappy, and often, almost always, leads to shareholder suits. Shareholders will sue the company, claiming that that the shareholders were disadvantaged by actions that the company took in stating and filing their financial statements. Very common. It happens all the time. Another effect of this is that the SEC will look into the matter and usually commences an investigation to see what went on, and often whether there was anybody who traded on the basis of non-public information about what went on. It almost always happens, and so it isn't surprising to me that either of those two things has occurred. There are also possible effects with respect to the banking relationships of the company. And the one thing that we are particularly concerned about, what will be the effects on the employees of the company, the consultants that are working on our project. And I think there are 28 or 30 people who have been assigned to our project, what are they going to do? Are they going to be, are other consulting firms going to try to hire them away? Are they going to become nervous and find another line of work? What's going to happen with those people? And that is something that I think we need to focus on. Well, we had the meeting I think it was last week, and I asked a number of questions that led me to the conclusions that you've heard me describe. But in line with the last of those questions, that is what's going to happen with the employees, Huron has told us that they will do everything they can to retain the personnel that we have on our project. And particularly, we have identified 4 particular what we regard as key persons on the project from Huron. And I'd like to ask Mr. Roth, where is that going? What will you be doing to make sure that we have those people on the project?
We're doing several things. First of all, when all this occurred, we obviously were very concerned about not just the people on this project, but people throughout the whole company. And so we have in the process of finalizing now a retention program that will be aimed at many of our key people, but will provide them with incentives to stay with the company over a period of time. We feel is very appropriate, and it takes one element of uncertainty out of what for them could look like a very uncertain environment right now. And so we are doing that. Specifically, we'll be talking about specific people with the university on this project here that will be part of that program as well. So we're nearing completion of that. I expect to be able to describe that within a week.
Okay. And along the same lines, we have identified other provisions of the contract that we would like to reinforce with protections for the university. And I know that the lawyers are drafting those provisions now, but presumably we will be able to put those provisions into effect if this board goes along with the proposal.
That's exactly right. We've been in discussions with the legal department on certain provisions that can be enacted. And again, from my perspective, the rationale for doing that is that even though we feel very comfortable with the stability of the company, and even though we feel comfortable that we will be able to retain our key employees, the reality is from the university's perspective, from the system's perspective, your risk profile has increased because of this. And it's our objective to take these provisions that we've now been in discussions with the legal department in order to provide you with greater comfort and some ability that we can mitigate those added risks. And that's exactly the process we're going down. That's both going to affect the key people, but it's also going to affect other aspects of the broader contract between Huron and the system that will help mitigate those risks.
One last point, and that is that, as I said before, we never know for sure what's going to happen. We don't know now what the fallout from all of this will be 1 month, 2 months, 6 months from now on Huron's ability to perform. Would you be willing to provide regular updates to the Business, Finance and Audit Committee as to the effects on the company of all of this?
I absolutely will, and I will offer that at whatever time you'd look for, whether it be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, in person, on a conference call, whatever makes sense. This is a very important project for us, and I will do whatever I can to provide you with timely, accurate, current information as it relates to the status of Huron and the people that are working on the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Bartel. Thanks for all of your work. Your questions, maybe we ought to get a little handle here on where we are in this process. If we approve this today, or tomorrow, then we don't have a contract now. We're going to do a new contract with some new terms in it that that Roth indicated, Richard Bartel indicated, Tom indicated. I'm trying to get a handle on what happens, what the procedure is.
Yeah, right now we have drafted. There is an existing contract, and what we are doing is identifying I think as Regent Bartel said, there are certain amendments that we are going to be including. There were some other conditions that we've also been discussing as well. Well, yeah, once this is approved, then we can finalize and move forward with that. But remember, there was an existing what's called time and expense contract. We continue on with that, but now with certain other conditions.
But so then if we approve it, we are basically saying you go negotiate certain terms and conditions which you are now working on that address some of the concerns that are being raised.
And we've had a lot of discussions on those, and they're very responsive.
I think at some point today or tomorrow it'd be good to spell out what some of those.
I did mention a few up there, but I
know.
I'll be happy to.
I understand. Okay, let me continue around the table. Jose, do you have any questions, comments?
Just on this matter, the one question that I have is just simply, is there a sense of timing? I know you reference a month, 6 months, but in a situation like this, whether in how it's being investigated and all of these things, are these, because we seem to be having, and more so your company but ultimately our project, kind of a cloud. We're under a cloud. And so the question that I have is there, under these kinds of circumstances, a time limit when that cloud seems to either get darker or disappears? Are we talking about things that have to happen between you and SEC and whomever? Is it like 6 months, 9 months, years? What are we talking about when there's kind of a resolution one way or the other?
Regent Bartel actually may have more experience with restatements and NCC investigations than I. I'm 6 weeks of experience at this stage. I'll tell you what we've been told so far, and that is that we issued a press release on July 31st indicating that we would be restating our earnings. And typically that restatement process, depending upon the complexity of the process, the actual, when you realize you've got to make a restatement, you then have to launch off on what can be a very complex process of actually making the restatement. You not only have to figure out what the impact is financially, but then you also then have to have your external auditors sign off on that. And that process often takes months, on occasion years, and it can be a very, very complicated process. We reissued our certified financial statements 17 days after we announced the restatement, which is a very, very short period of time. So on August 17th, I believe, was the day we reissued the financial statements. So that took some cloud over it. But the SEC investigation will continue. We have been told that it's entirely possible that the SEC investigation, this was all came to our attention internally. We raised it internally. Our audit committee hired outside counsel and actually a second outside counsel to look over the shoulder of the first one. We then submitted those reports to the SEC from both of those outside counsel on or about August 17th, and the SEC will now begin its investigation. We've been told that this process could take 6 months, could take 12 months. A lot will depend upon, once they review the documents that have been given to them, whether they want to go back and have additional interviews, whether they want to look at additional documentation. We've been told to expect that time frame. We've also been told to expect that we're not going to hear much until they're done. And Regent Bartel, you may have other thoughts on that as well, but our sense is that when you talk about a cloud, there's two types of things. There's certainly a cloud now in the sense that there's been a lot of publicity, most of which is certainly not favorable. But at the same time, I think as we go through and as we continue to be successful in the core businesses that we have, I think over time people are going to realize that the company's doing just fine. I think that cloud will ease. It's my opinion that cloud will ease over what I hope to be a relatively short period of time. I don't expect there to be a lot of press and publicity about this event now that it's passed until, again, the SEC comes forward with whatever conclusions it comes forward with. Regent Bartel, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's entirely consistent with my experience. The SEC typically does not tell you much of what it's investigating or when the investigation is going to be concluded. I can only speculate as to what it involves, but I do think that 6 months at the earliest is probably a period of time during which there will be no word on what the SEC is doing. And I should say this, that from what I've seen, what I've read, whatever the SEC does, I think it's unlikely that it will seriously disable the company. I think even if there are sanctions involving the company, I think the company will survive this investigation. Now I'm just speculating, but that's on the basis of my experience.
Okay, any point up this side of the table first? Anybody? Tom?
Tom, some clarifications, just quick clarifications. Did the legislature approve, albeit possibly in the budget, UW budget, the expenditure of these sources of funds for this purpose?
What we've done is we're providing them with IT reports, which is the one place that we'll provide them with budgets specific to each of the projects. This project, as such, doesn't go as part of the budget process to the legislature during the biennial budget. We're literally creating this right now, connected, though, to the reports that we've already provided to I think it's the Joint Committee on Information Technology. That's really the point at which we provide the information.
So, but you have a settlement pot of money here, you have lapses, you have...
Yes.
They didn't question, they didn't target that handy pot of money for anything else in the budget. This is just a internal university use of our own resources that amount to $81 million?
Well, the $7.5 million that we look at per year, that $44 to $50 million, is an operating budget resource. But we see it so important that as opposed to putting it against, as opposed to asking the campuses to assess, to do an assessment on the campuses that would provide us $7 million a year, we're saying we don't want to do that. We really don't want to impact the instructional budgets, so we'll find it at this level. And that was sort of the trade-off for us. Now, I don't imagine, to be honest, that if people look at the overall project, its value, its need, that the fund sources would be questioned. Because the only other source is going back to the campuses and assessing.
Okay, now I think that Regent Smith's question was answered. What we would be voting on is extending an existing contract that we're now in the midst of changing.
Renegotiating, or what? Well, how would you?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, the original intent, as I understand it, was to bring to the board an implementation plan. Say, here's the plan for the remainder of the project. To go through the history, here's the plan, $81.4 million. That's really what we're looking for. Secondarily, we're going to be spending an additional $33.4 million this year. We want you to know that. We want you to be aware that, we talk about the transparency. We want to make sure everybody understands the plan and the funding for this year. That was really the primary purpose of bringing this forward, along with the fact that we also, on a biennial basis or a semi-annual basis, we have to provide reports to a committee at the legislative level that says, here's our major IT projects. Here's what they cost, here's what they are. We now have to bring to them what, in effect, is this full implementation plan. So as we move out of the next couple of days, as this is approved, we literally then redefine this into the information that we would give the legislature. So I think, yes, we are working on some additional contract language, and that would be part of this, but primarily we're just saying to the board, here's the implementation plan. Understand it. Know what we're trying to do. And by the way, we're going to come back as needed to tell you the progress, and in the next 2 years, you'll be approving those budgets as well.
President Riley. Yeah.
Let me try to respond to clarify, Regent Lucas. I think, and Pat Brady can correct me if I'm wrong. We have a basic contract we've been working on with this company for a couple of years. That contract will remain. When we learned of the need for the company to restate its financials, we sought further assurances from them about their fiscal health, their ability to retain the key people that were working on our project, further penalties if they were not meeting their weekly production goals. So we now, and they've been very responsive on that, we now have those lined out on a sheet of paper. I think there's a question as to whether we would renegotiate the contract or simply have that as a side letter agreement, and I don't know whether that's been determined yet.
I think we're talking about an amendment to the contract.
Okay, amendment to the contract. But these provisions are to the basic contract. Then the provisions that we're talking about coming in are those we requested the company to make in the back and forth we've had since we learned of their need to restate the financials. So they're a good thing, is my basic point as far as we're concerned.
Well, last clarification, but on that, I think I would feel uncomfortable voting for something when you haven't renegotiated the contract with the safeguards in it, which I assume we do. Last thing, it's all well and good to talk about Ohio State and the Big Ten and whatever, but we're doing this inside the state of Wisconsin to make our system, among other things, complementary to the other state agencies. Now, what are other state agencies doing? I'm assuming that they're under the same old system as we are. Are we the first?
Well, historically, when you go back, I think, 3 or 4 years, and probably Ed Meacham can help me on this, but we were supposed to be doing this at the same time, in conjunction with DOA. They had the same plan to do the HRS, to do PeopleSoft. They then made the decision, and I'm not sure when that was, that they didn't want to do it, that they wanted to push that off. They're still planning on doing it. Other state agencies obviously aren't at that point yet, but their plan is to follow up and I think to some degree look at what we're doing and see how it works out.
Ed, you want to comment on your relationship with the CIO for the state?
The state bought the same software. Okay. The state bought the same software we did and intended to implement it beginning in 2007. They decided that they would not implement in 2008 for reasons that didn't really apply to us at all at the time. We continued on with our planning with the understanding that we would work with the state when they began to do their implementation. So they bought PeopleSoft, just as we did, and they still intend to implement it. They have a completely different payroll system than we do. It's very antiquated, and they are very concerned about that payroll system. I was over yesterday at DOA, and they expressed grave concern about their own payroll system and hope that they would be able to begin implementation once the recession had mitigated.
Right, thank you. Regent Conley-Keesler, you have a question.
I have one question, but first, I don't think there's any question we have to do something ASAP. The $82 million, as painful as it is technology. It's what the costs are, and we just have to live with it. I think the plan is good. The one concern I have with the company is, as the SEC does this investigation, we don't know what might come out of this. If something comes out of this that we cannot live with and we have to terminate this contract, what's your plan B? Because we could be $30 million into this and we have to go plan B. So do you have a plan B?
Well, there is a plan B.
Right.
I mean, there's actually a couple directions that we can go. One of the best things that we can do right now is to be able to work with Huron for as long as possible. The longer we can work with them and the farther we can get down the road in the implementation, that much less work we're going to have to do with a new or a different consultant. But let's say that, that there is an issue and we've got to find a new consultant. The dilemma that we have is that you've got to go out with an RFP and it's going to take 4 to 5 months to do that. And you then have to make sure that consultant can actually come in and pick up, because we don't want to start all over, where Huron and UW has left off. The interim that you're talking about is a period of time that if we can continue to develop, at some reasonable clip, we can then maintain our employees. But once you lose Huron or whoever the consultant is, and they're out for 4, 5, 6 months, you've lost half of your ability to continue. Which we keep talking about the value of staffing. In this instance, we would probably find that many people would, on the UW-HRS side, would leave, that there would be other opportunities, and we could not guarantee them employment. I mean, we can't say, hold on for 6 or 7 months, we don't know exactly what you'll do. So that's really the dilemma that we face. We do have to prepare for it to the degree that I think, you're right. If something happens, we have to figure out as streamlined a method as possible. But the farther we can move down the road with our present arrangements, it's that much more of an opportunity for success down the road.
Aaron, did you have something?
Sure. A couple quick questions. I wanted to know, is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to know, in the past years, how much has been built into the UW system budget for planning for this project? What's the dollar amount?
For this project, it's
It's 19 million total, but how much?
Well, the planning is $12 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say we're going to add in 19 million in savings for HRS that we've saved already.
That's correct.
How much has that been on a yearly basis in our budget?
I don't know that it has been a consistent amount. I mean, I don't know that probably in the range of $3 to $4 million annually.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to be expanding that 3 to 4 million to 7.5 million going forward.
Well, no, the 19 million comes out of is a separate resource. You've got the operating resources. That's a regular operating ongoing budget is where we'll get the $7.5 million. We're getting the $19 million out of a whole separate pot of money that is specifically for, in this case, HRS.
Okay, but the 7.5, okay.
That's out of an operating budget. You've got an operating budget versus a reserve.
Okay, so we were just saving up for the last couple of years, knowing that we're going to have this project.
Yep.
Okay, and so I'm fairly concerned about the 7.5 for the next few years and exactly how that is not going to affect either students or campuses. How do we have 7.5 just really laying around that we're able to take away from a completely other source and devote to this? How do we have that kind of flexibility in this economic climate?
Well, we have specifically set aside those dollars for the last 3 or 4 years for the purposes of lapses. I mean, if the governor comes back and says our revenues are going to be down and UWS, you've got to provide us with $10 million. We have to provide that. We then don't go back to the campuses and say, well, give us $10 million. It's handled centrally. And that's basically been a safety net so that we don't have to go back to the campuses. In this instance, instead of going back to the campuses up front and saying, well, give us money for this new system, what we're saying is leave your budgets as they are. We won't come in and take any funding out of that, but we're going to be using some of these flexible dollars that we've had at the system level.
Okay, but what if the governor comes back in the future and says we're still in a financial crisis and we need $166 million again from your campuses? I mean, how do we handle that without a reserve intact? I mean, is it going to be even more detrimental?
When you talk about those really large reductions, the system reserve is not at that level at all. We're talking about in the range of $10 million that we would have, and in this case, we're going to be obligating about $7.5 million. Okay. So when we're talking about really large sums, we're literally going back to the campuses and doing that.
Okay. And then I have one kind of on another note. We're talking about PeopleSoft, which is employed by hundreds of corporations and higher education institutions across the country, so arguably probably the most widely used software program out there for this kind of instance. How are there not already programmed in the kind of features that we're looking for? Let's say we're talking about the 9/12 issue. How is that programming code not already available somewhere because another institution has used that? How is there that gap still there?
Well, I mean, I think we can identify and we have the people to do it, but somebody has to do it. When we buy it from PeopleSoft, they're saying, here's the basic vanilla package. Do what you want with it. And by the way, if you want to do the 9/12, we'll be able to help you. We can do that. In some ways, and I don't know that it's intentional, but it certainly benefits them to have certain features not completely part of that original package.
Okay. Because I'm trying not to be naive about technological innovations, but it just seems like an enormous price tag to go along with a very simple modification. So, I mean,
but the hours,
but
it isn't simple.
That's why I'm trying not to be naive, thinking paying you over 12 months versus 9 months seems like something simple, you know. But so I'm not trying to assume that it would be. I'm sure it's very complicated, and you have people looking at it. But okay, those are a couple questions I have. Thank you.
Other end of the table, Regent Walsh.
Yes. Oh, is this on?
Yep.
I first of all want to say that when we first became aware of this issue, that some attorneys or journalists might call scandalous, or that the company is reeling, I think we did a good job. What we did is we immediately started asking questions, and the company was extremely forthcoming. Our meeting on Friday was very important. My only criticism of Mr. Roth is that if you really do have 9 of the 10 Big Ten schools, you're missing the 11th. I'm sorry. You better talk to your marketing program or department. In any event, to me, the issue is very simple. When we got to this point where the information on July 31 came in, we were doing well. If you recall, we had a failure with the Lawson program. We spent $26 million. We thought we had a break when the state DOA chose PeopleSoft. We went with PeopleSoft. We started planning. And as I understand it, the one thing we did was we attacked the planning process, and more important than anything, we attacked the business practices, and we directed ourselves to solve the business practices. And we're now at the implementation stage, way ahead of before, where we didn't do the planning before the implementation. So today, to me, this issue is simple. It's because we don't know what will happen to Huron that we need to do 2 things. And when I say we don't know, you've only lost 1 client, and you've gotten a couple more, and someday you'll get that 11th Big Ten school. But we really don't know. It's only been 2 months. Anything could happen. So we need to do 2 things. The first thing is we need to seek changes to the contract that will give us some comfort. We did that over the last 5 days. We started that on Friday when we asked Mr. Roth, tell us what you will do to make us comfortable that your company will continue to provide the resources that are working. And over the last 5 days, we've done that. Now, I would tell you it's a little bit like putting lipstick on a pig, because if this company fails, all the safeguards do is just give us a head start on solving the problem. So to me, the most important thing is for us to continue to be diligent. And that means have Mr. Roth and his designee come in here. It means have our counsel continue to monitor the lawsuits that started out at 8 and now are 15. But believe me, that's only because most of the plaintiffs' attorneys and class actions, the 2 main ones, went to jail, and we got a lot more plaintiffs' attorneys out there. But this is a classic class action. They'll certify the class, and they'll race to the courthouse and find out who the lead attorney will be, and they'll be off trying to settle this. But the important thing for us is to do our own due diligence and continue to supervise and review this project. I don't think we have another alternative. The downside is too much. The alternative doesn't work. But that doesn't mean we won't be ready to make a quick change if something happens. And I have no reason to believe it will. I agree with Jeff's assessment. But on the other hand, the market always knows more than us. And when you go from 44 to 13 and blip back up to 18, there's somebody out there that still has a concern. I think we're addressing it. I think we're dealing with it. I think we're doing everything we can do. And I trust the assurances we've gotten from the company, and in particular the fact that they hired 2 outstanding law firms, both as independent counsel to the auditing committee as well as the board of directors, to internally investigate and make recommendations. And finally, the arcaneness of this restatement is truly arcane. It involves the correct accounting treatment for capitalization of purchase versus expenses, and beyond that it gets even more complicated, and it really doesn't deal with how they make widgets. It deals with the past, and right now they have the resources, they're on campus, we like what they're doing. I'm happy with what I hear from the first day I heard this. My only question to you is what client did you lose? Because I didn't think we lost any last week.
I'm not actually sure we can say we even lost one. We lose. I mean, we bid on a lot of projects every day. We win more than we lose, certainly, but I don't even remember which one it was. I don't think it was really attributable to this.
Oh, okay. It wasn't as a result of this.
We,
okay.
no.
It wasn't Penn State.
That would make 11, right?
Questions or comments from this side of the table? Anyway, John.
Yeah, President Riley mentioned how painful it is to be spending $81 million on something like this when it could be better spent on salaries for our faculty and other things. But obviously it's essential that we do go forward with this. But the only thing that's more painful than spending the $81 million probably was the $26 million that was spent that all we got was some hard lessons out of. So I guess my question for Tom is, we talk about there's milestones that Huron has to meet or there will be penalties. Does that equate to, the system actually being up and running? Are there some guarantees that are built into the contract that we will actually be successful and that Huron's part will lead us to that success?
There's specific deliverables. We identify and between our staff and Huron, we sit down and we say, this is what we've got to accomplish on a quarterly basis. We've been doing this for the last 9 months. That becomes the basis. If in fact they don't deliver and it's their responsibility, there are specific damages. Now, all of that, if you add all of that up, that gets us to the end in 2012. And for us, we have to stay on task to make sure that if there are issues with certain deliverables, if there are other concerns, that we figure out a way of accelerating any of our concerns so that we can keep at that 2012 date.
I just wanted to clarify, following up on Tom Loftus's question, Regent Loftus's question, because when I look at the letter that we got from Chuck Pruitt, President Pruitt, and let me give you all your titles, President Riley, and the resolution itself, it seems like we are being asked to, ultimately to approve the plan and to vote on a budget, not necessarily to approve an amended contract. Knowing that that is happening is a good thing, but it's not like we're that is dependent on this, although it may influence a decision that any one of us may make. Am I correct in that assumption?
I guess from our perspective, I sort of gave the broad framework, but if the board is seeking to have an approval of the contract as a condition, as we move forward through this, we're ready. We're going to be ready to go. But I think it's definitely, we're still talking to them. If you are suggesting, or Regent Loftus, that maybe we should condition the final approval.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No. I just wanted to clarify what I thought we were being asked to review. And if that is indeed, then I think that sort of answers the question in terms of what's before us. And I just thought it was a little murky based on that exchange.
Regent Davis, it's that what you're being asked to approve today in the resolution you have before you, as it's currently stated, is the implementation budget for 2010 and the overall plan, with the notion that we will come back as regularly as you want us to give you updates on how the plan is going.
Right. And I also want to say, and thank you for that clarification, because I think it simplifies things, at least in my head. I also wanted to express support for this because it seems to me, I agree with you, President Riley, this is like, not awful, but, it's a must, but I don't feel all that great about it. I do support it, however, because it seems like to me any day delay enhances or increases the likelihood of all kind of other things that, like the system doesn't work, this COBOL system, like, costs increase and so on. And it seems like the team should be really commended, all inclusive of our regents who participated in the thoroughness of learning from the prior mistakes, and then also just being quickly to adapt, thankfully with a partner that wants to be that way. And so I support it. I think we ought to move forward quickly and get going and get the system on the other side of it not mattering whatever ends up happening with the SEC. So thank you.
Thank you, Denise. At some point, here's where we are. We're certainly not going to, we can continue discussing. At some point, some member of the potentially some member of the committee could move approval of this resolution and have any amendments that would be considered with that as well. But I don't want to cut off discussion yet, just to our Business and Finance and Audit Committee. Is there further questions, comments? Mike?
I just wanted to mention you took the one that works. I understand what's going on with the company, with the SEC. There are other potential negative impacts to the company, other than the SEC, that I think we ought to have on the table. I agree that the accounting is archaic. I've been through that kind of accounting, and the SEC process will be the SEC's process. But in the meantime, it does make for more challenges to running a company. And some of those challenges are ability to raise capital, ability to borrow, and you mentioned loan covenants, and I'm sure we're not sure what that means right now. Ability to grow, all the effort and energy that goes into resolving the situation that does not go into their core line of business. So I just wanted, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to support Huron, but I just wanted that on the table, that there's more things that can happen to Huron than just this SEC investigation.
I think if I could add, and maybe Mr. Roth wants to amplify on this, one of the things we learned in the Friday meeting with him is that his board has given him the charge of running the company while they try to focus with the outside counsel on the SEC and restatement matters. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, President Riley, thank you. Yes, when I was first asked to take over the company at the end of July, it was very clear that first we did several things. Under the prior circumstances, the CEO was also the chairman of the board. Since July 31st, the CEO is not going to be the chairman of the board. We have a non-executive vice chairman, or non-executive chairman, which from a governance perspective, I'm sure is something that most organizations would applaud. That's exactly what we've executed. And when I was told about the restatement, when I was asked to be CEO, I was also told that the board would, in fact, take over complete responsibility for managing the investigations, for managing any lawsuits that come up, and that my entire focus would be to do what I think any shareholder would want me to be doing, and that is to be managing the company into the future. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And I know, I'll just give you now some personal thoughts about this because I think it's relevant to much of the discussion that we've had. So since July 31st, there has been a tremendous amount of speculation in the press about things like whether the company is going to survive. There's been speculation about all kinds of things. And when when we released our financial statements and I was first able to talk publicly about this, I explained very clearly that I feel like I've been leading two different lives. On the one hand, I read about the speculation in the press, and on the other hand, I see what's happening on a day-to-day event with our people and our clients, which has been incredibly steady, incredibly supportive. And that was the case when I first spoke back in the middle of August. That is absolutely the case today. And I certainly understand if somebody comes back and say, can you understand why somebody might be concerned about the company? Can you understand why there might be a lot of these things? I understand that completely. But I also know that I know our people, I know our clients, I know our ability to deliver, and I feel extremely confident that the stability of Huron is not at all going to be an issue on the go-forward basis. Are there questions? Are there things going to be about the banking and additional investors and all that? Those are very legitimate questions. We're addressing them and have addressed them. And we're very much on top of what it's going to take to keep this company on a pace that has been as successful as it has been. And that's my job. I feel very comfortable going forward with that. In fact, the majority of my time has not been spent in the past dealing with investigations. It is all spent in the future, and I've been working with clients. I've been generating new work along with many of my colleagues. And I'll tell you, my day-to-day, hour-to-hour effort is not in the rearview mirror, but it's looking forward. And I will tell you, I feel extremely confident. We got to where we were in terms of growth and the size of our practices because we got very, very competent people. And the competency of those people have not changed. So far, they have stayed. It's my job to make sure they're still incented to stay and now to go forward. And we have a great company, and that's exactly where we'll be going. As it relates to this particular issue today that we're talking about, you have my word that we will do everything within our power to make this entirely seamless, such that if nobody ever read the paper, you should never even know that there was an issue with Huron as you go forward with this project. That is my goal, it's my objective, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that happens.
Tom, sir.
Just to make clear, Kevin, you are going to insist in a number of safeguards to be added to this contract to protect the taxpayers of this state and the university. Those safeguards will take the form of amendments to the contract, is what we have been told. And that list of safeguards, 1 through 10, whatever it is, we will have in front of us or know what they are or will be distributed to us before we vote?
We can do that.
By tomorrow? Sure.
Yes.
By tomorrow.
We can do that. Yes.
Thanks. All right. Is there a member of the committee, which includes ex officio members, Pruitt and Spector, who would like to move the resolution?
I'll move resolution.
I'll give it a try,
Okay.
if I may, wearing my ex officio hat.
Okay, you do it.
I would suggest that we consider a resolution which starts out with that upon recommendation of the President of the University of Wisconsin System, the Board of Regents approve A, the System Administration's project implementation plan for the HRS project, and B, the fiscal year 2010 implementation budget for that project. In each case, subject to the negotiation of amendments to the existing HRS system contract with Huron Consulting, satisfactory to the Regent President and the System President. It is understood that the Board of Regents will annually review the project implementation plan and that its Business and Finance Committee will receive regular reports on the status of the project and the performance of Huron Consulting's contractual obligations.
Is there a second to that? Second. You want to speak to that, Mike?
Well, we were really doing two different things, as Tom and others have pointed out. The project implementation plan, which runs through 2012, if I remember correctly, and this fiscal year's budget. And we are saying that we're prepared to do both, but we're concerned that we not do that formally until amendments to the contract, as Jeff talked about, are in place that are satisfactory. And as opposed to all of us trying to do that, I think we should delegate that to Kevin and Chuck with Pat and whomever else is advising them, and Jeff, and whoever they choose to speak to about it from the board. At the same time, I think we talked about reviewing the plan annually to make sure that we're satisfied with it, and in light of Huron's current problems and Mr. Roth's offer, reviewing the status of things as regularly as you think appropriate, which could be, you said, monthly or quarterly or whatever we want.
Further comments or discussion from committee members?
I guess I'm ex officio.
You are.
I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now.
You are, President Pruitt.
I wonder if we might amend this, or at least the committee might consider an amendment to sort of strengthen even further, which I think is already a strong set of what I would call accountability issues. I think we all are now appreciative of the importance of this, the complexity of this, and given the history of the first project, I think it is terribly important that this board be actively engaged on a constant basis, or sort of a constant presence in the evolution of this project, both internally, looking at progress, reports from the Huron Consulting Group. I mean, I've heard a lot today about sort of appropriate, I think, Regent concern that we are being kept abreast of all these things. So I guess I'd like to suggest adding to what Mike's a more specific addition that would, I was working on the original version of the amendment, but it would essentially add, or the resolution, it would essentially add at the end, subject to annual review and to regular reports to the board through the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee beginning in October 2009 and continuing at every regularly scheduled board meeting until implementation is complete. What that will do is through the Business and Finance and Audit Committee, you guys need a little something on your agenda from time to time. It will ensure that that is happening and that you can then obviously report back to the full board as you see fit on any changes. To
I'll
the
second
process.
that.
I'll accept it as a friendly amendment, isn't that?
Yes, that's what I was going to say, and that Eileen would accept that as well. Okay. Any further discussion from committee members? All in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. Just committee members, but that's all right. I didn't hear any nays from committee members. All right. Thank you very much for that. Let me just ask before we break or here, we have a second item on a project status report for major information technology. Ed suggested that could potentially be deferred, or does it have to be done today?
I think given the reporting requirement to the legislature, it needs to be done today.
All right. We will do it. Ed. This is a project status report for major information technology projects as required by Wisconsin statutes.
In addition to the HRS project, of course, we had the planning project. So in your packet, there is a summary of the completion of that HRS planning project. There are also 5 other projects that I'm happy to report are all on time and on budget. In fact, 2 of the campus solution, the student information system projects, are now complete. The one at Stout and the one at La Crosse. Eau Claire's student information system is on time and on budget as well. Their full implementation, though, isn't scheduled until a year from this fall. There's an identity and access management project that is in phase 2 of that project. That too is on time and on budget, and it is working in conjunction with the HRS project because we expect to use that new identity and access management system along with the HRS implementation. And there is a new budget project that is first appearing here. We must find a new budget system since the old budget system was linked to our legacy HR and payroll system. So that is a separate project, but it is done in coordination with the HRS project. So those are all the projects over $1 million that are now being undertaken or have been completed in the UW system. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have over them. There's a brief description of each of them in your packet.
Any questions for Ed? It doesn't require any action. All right. Okay. Thank you, Ed, for that brief and concise report. That is all of our business this morning. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No.